Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. It is now 8:30 a.m. We'll move forward with item number 2, which is our roll call. Dr. Hernandez,
Yes.
please proceed.
Yes, Chairman. Good morning. Dr. Cummings?
Here.
Ms. Payne? Mr. Margot?
Here.
Mr. Montgomery?
Here.
Dr. Patel?
Yeah.
Dr. Rice?
Here.
Dr. Rosenfeld?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
He's online, right?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
We'll move to item 3. Members, you have the draft minutes of the May 21st Oversight Committee meeting in your agenda packet behind tab 1. Are there any corrections to the minutes as circulated? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 21st Oversight Committee meeting.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now moving to item 4, public comment. Our next agenda item is public comment. Texans created CPRIT. Opening our meetings with public comment underscores this board's commitment to transparency and accountability. Mr. Ellis, has CPRIT received any requests to provide public comment?
We've not, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. We'll move on to item number 5, the CEO report. The chair calls Ms. Doyle to provide the Chief Executive Officer's report. Good morning.
Good morning. So my report is behind tab 2. I'll go through this hopefully quickly. We've got a big meeting. Of course, the first thing is the grant funds available. And with the awards today, if the Oversight Committee approves the entire slate, we will be ending the fiscal year with just under $2 million remaining in our grant awards. So we always try and leave that buffer just so that we're not hitting too close. So we're doing it exactly right. And so believe it or not, the last time we met, the legislature was still going. I guess technically they are still going now in special session, but their regular session had not ended. So I did include in my memo a summary of everything that had happened during the session with the bills that directly affected CPRIT. There were 5 of them, and then also other bills that we were tracking throughout the session. So that gives you a pretty exhaustive update. But I will say, in terms of all 5 of the bills directly affecting CPRIT, most of them, well, none of them passed. Most of them didn't even have committee hearings. One of them, Senate Bill 2796, had a committee hearing. That was on the return on investment with CPRIT. And it is something that we will be talking about before the next legislative session, particularly in terms of revenue sharing terms. And we've talked about this before, but DPRIT also was passed, and I bring that up again for this board because the discussions in every single committee hearing and on the floor in both chambers, every single time they talked about this is CPRIT for dementia. And that was used as the shorthand for we're doing the right thing. Texas is doing the right thing with this cancer initiative that we're doing. Now we're going to tackle another huge issue that's affecting Texas. So overwhelming bipartisan support, in fact, nearly unanimous on the Senate side, and only a handful that voted in opposition on the House side. So it is a testament to the leadership and the work that you all have done that, just referring to the agency and saying CPRIT was enough to push this over the line. Now, there still needs to be a statewide vote in November before DPRIT becomes a reality. But by the next legislative session, the next meeting that we have, we'll know that. The other thing, of course, that we always have to look at every session is appropriations. We did remarkably well. Not only was this the session that we were able to have our full appropriations, no money that went over to DSHS to support the Texas Cancer Registry. So we have our full funding, but we also were able to have additional money set aside in a capital budget in the supplemental funding. And again, that is a testament to all of you. We really appreciate the work that you did in allowing us to have that special meeting and get that approved so that we were able to be in the supplemental budget. And the being in the supplemental budget meant that we were able to start our work on getting the new grant management platform this summer rather than waiting till September 1st. So you'll hear from our staff later this meeting about what we've been able to do so far on that. Also, and this is another part that I'm required to do, hope this will be the last meeting that I need to do it. We were approved for 10 additional FTEs. You guys know, and I included in my memo, we have been operating at higher than our approved level of FTEs for several months. So we are at 51 FTEs right now. Currently, we are approved for 44 FTEs. Effective September 1st, we will have 54. We're approved for 54 FTEs.
So that'll be the last part of this update. We have been doing a lot of interviewing. And Lisa Nelson is here. You'll see her. We'll go into closed session. Please give her a hug in your appreciation. She does our HR work in addition to many, many, many other things at CPRIT, like so many of our employees do. And so she has been part of the interview process for all of the interviews that we're doing. So not only the chief prevention officer, chief product development officer, but we are hiring additional grant accountants, compliance staff, what I call, as not being an accountant, I call an accountant, as different from the grant accountants. So we've been doing a lot of interviews so that we are ready on September 1st to hit the ground running. We will have another wave of, we'll catch our breath and then have another wave of interviews and positions to be filled. We've got 2 program manager positions to fill, and several more, including in external relations. So it's an exciting time. I wish we didn't have to do this all at once, but I know that 6 months from now, a year from now, I'll be thrilled. We'll all be thrilled with, this new energy and new perspective that comes in to work with, people who have been at this agency for 5 years, 10 years, nearly 20 years. It's a great time, and it's really exciting. To that end, also, I included something in the memo, and I've let you know about this. Governor Abbott earlier this year, kind of late spring, put out the directive about returning state employees to offices, after COVID. I think most state agencies were like CPRIT, where we were 100% in the office prior to COVID, then had to pivot immediately, which was a big transition. I mean, it was a huge deal for our IT, but also, and I'm certainly of this generation, I like to read things on paper. So I print things out, and I think, think of our grant accountants that are looking at all of the receipts. So it was a huge transition to go to working at home. But we found out we were just as productive, sometimes more productive, being able to put your heads down and really dive into your work. And so that just continued, with the governor's directive, and certainly, in my first months as CEO, it is apparent that we miss something by not being in the office together. It's too easy to use the term culture, as like that broad umbrella, but it truly is something that we're missing. We're all pulling for the same mission, but to be able to interact with your colleagues, where you're really learning from them, not because you've scheduled a Teams meeting and getting on that chat with them, but because you're just hearing about what they're excited about seeing. And and I'll say this also, this is Dr. Moore's last oversight committee meeting with us, but she's a perfect example. Prior to COVID, when we were always in the office, I loved walking past her office and poking my head in and saying, "Oh, what are you working on?" And because she, worked so closely with the CPRIT scholars, as they were coming on board or, was talking with grantees, she always had something interesting to talk about, and some, interesting story to tell that, of course, we all know why we're doing what we're doing, but to hear, every day what projects are happening, is a great thing. So we've added so many people during COVID that we don't have enough space to have every single body in the office at the same time. And then also to preserve some of the good things about remote work, again, like the being able to put your head down and really focus on the task at hand. We have introduced a hybrid policy that will become effective September 1st. So employees will be in the office at least 20 hours a week. And then the other 20, up to 20, they can choose to work remotely. So we'll keep you updated on that. But that is another big change that is coming to what we do. So thank you for your support all through this. And, I think the last time I talked with you in May, kind of my theme was transitions. And it's certainly, this can be transition part 2. I think even, a year from now, I'll be talking about transition part 7. But just as I was saying that this is Dr. Moore's last oversight committee meeting with us and Dr. LeBeau, we will have an interesting time. We are allowed to have 2 chief scientific officers for 30 days. And Dr. LeBeau has been extremely gracious in staying on through the end of the month so that she and Dr. Hebert, who this is his first oversight committee meeting as chief scientific officer, can both work together and on that transition. I'm thrilled about everything that's happening. It is bittersweet to be losing, the people to, good for them. I'm glad in terms of retirement. Ramona Magid is also somebody, she retired earlier this year. Or earlier this month. Thank you again. And like I said, give Lisa a pat on the back. Do you guys have any questions?
Need for CPRIT to find larger office space?
So that's a good question. Many agencies right now are also dealing with the same issues that we are. And even when we moved into this office space, it took a couple years of planning and procurement and build out. So it would not be a fast decision.
Any other questions for Ms. Doyle? Thank you very much. Appreciate your work. We're going to move to item 6, compliance report and certification. The chair recognizes Mr. Burgess to present the Chief Compliance Officer's report. Good morning.
Good morning. You'll find my report behind tab 3 in your meeting booklet. I'll forgo all the wit and just get right to it.
That's what they come for.
So, yeah. On 3-1, we start summarizing our delinquent report. And at any given time, we have about 540 active grants, about $1.5 billion under grants management. In this latest, as of August the 1st, I think we had 11 reports that were delinquent, well below the 5% threshold that we have. That's a kind of a self-imposed number. So we feel very good about that. It's been a busy 3 months. We've done quite a few second level reviews of FSRs, almost 600 of those with a 14% return rate. In terms of desk reviews, we performed 10 desk reviews. On the next page, 10 on-site reviews. Those are pretty exhaustive. You know, we two of our staff pair up and go on-site together, and have done 10 of those. One of the things that took up a bit of some conversation in our audit subcommittee was the match expenditure reviews. And so you may recall we started doing those, 4 or 5 years ago, and we review 100% of match expenses. Interesting, we've seen over a 70% increase this year in match expenditures. And so I think last year we did 29 million, and I think we're up to over 46, almost 47 million this year. And so that takes quite a bit of time. But you also may recall in May, I mentioned that because of the decrease in the amount of disallowance, we're questioning whether doing a 100% review of every grantee that has a match is really the best use of our time. And Dr. Rice had asked, what were the percentages of that over the last few years? And in November of every year, we do give you sort of a previous fiscal year overview, so you'll get all the details then. But I did want to kind of share that with you. So we started in FY21, we had a 7.7% disallowance rate. Then we went down to a 1.2%, then a 0.6, and a 1%. And I think this year we're at a 0.1%, some really insignificant number overall. So we're going to look at, as I mentioned in May, revamping that and creating a tiered review of that and do more sampling. We think that's more efficient and effective. And as Ms. Doyle had mentioned in our audit subcommittee, there is a likelihood, a possibility that the federal government will change or tweak the federal indirect cost rate and put a cap on that. Or so there's a likelihood that some of our academic research grantees that currently meet the match by their indirect cost rate will have to, produce and verify they have used their own money to meet a match. So it could even more increase from this. So we want to be strategic in how we approach that. We're finalizing our grantee monitoring schedule for FY26. We have completed our grantee risk assessment for that. More to come on that schedule still being developed. And in terms of training and support, we really believe in that, and we attribute the support we give to our grantees as one of the main contributors to the disallowance rate for match, going down so low. And we do everything we can to help our grantees be successful. But in our training support area, we conducted our second series in June. We had a little over about 275 grantee staff attend that. And again, we also, anytime there's a new authorized signing official change, we give them a specific training. Any new grantees get a training. And you may recall for our product development grantees, not only do they get an initial training, but we actually, for their first financial status report submission, we provide technical assistance up through that. So their very first one, we can kind of hold their hand in a sense to make sure they get that right. And if we have to do it again and again, we'll do it till they get it right. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Marco.
Except,
Mitch, I was just curious, there's more and more work for you because we do more and more grants and everything else. How long does it take you to do a desk review, both just internally and one on-site? What's the length of time?
It varies due to the complexity. So, for instance, a product development grantee on-site review will probably take a little bit more time, but we do lots of planning in advance of that. So we'll do sampling far in advance and do a lot of that at our desks. So when we go out, we've got kind of a full picture. but we're sending out, from start to finish, we're sending out notifications 30 to 60 days prior, scheduling that. We provide a box.com sort of repository for them to upload their documents. So we request a lot of things in advance. And then we go on site. That reviews probably 2 to 3 hours. We're meeting with all their staff. And then any follow-up items that they can get to us relatively quickly, then we'll allow a certain period of time before we see it as a finding. And then, the report goes out. And again, we go through a tiered process where their compliance specialist does the report. It goes to, Stephen for a review, then it comes to me for review. So I review each one of those reports. I'm not giving you a straight answer. Hours for desk on-site reviews. And again, it could be, a few days to do a desk review as well, because you might not notice, but we used to call them desk reviews, and now they're called enhanced desk reviews. Our original desk review process, because we were so young, we were looking at, did you submit your report on time? Is this report, and we said, well, that wasn't really yielding anything important for us. So we switched it to an enhanced desk review. We do a lot more sampling now. And so that can take several hours. Again, it depends on, does a grantee get us information when they should? Sometimes we have to follow up with the grantee several times to get us this information. I would say, and compliance staff don't hate me for this, but I would say, 2 or 3 days at least for an enhanced, and probably overall, you're probably looking at 7 to 10 days for an on-site combined everything.
Which is extensive. And I just was curious as I was reading all the data as whether or not, I mean, of course, staffing's a big issue. That's something we got to, your area is, and just wondering if you have the freedom to tweak it. It sounds like you do on the things that are de minimis and things like that. You can tweak and change the format and do it in a more efficient way if it's way. You're not, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're not locked into a set structure.
Correct.
You've got flexibility to figure out how best to do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was my question.
Sure. Dr. Hernandez. Thank you. Great reports from both of you. I don't know who I'm going to ask this question to, but so what happens going forward? No, it's ignorance on my side. When we go forward, and you're right, the federal government is going to be doing that soon. We're going to be the ones, this board to decide, because it's going to happen, that somebody's going to come and say, you know what, I'm missing $3 million, $10 million. That was my match. I don't have it. Can CPRIT give it to me? Because there's always new applicants coming in, and I'm not favoring either side. I'm just saying, are we the ones who are going to be deciding that, or did the state give us? They're aware of this might be happening. Did they give us rules on how to deal with that, or how are we going to be facing that?
So it's in our statute that we have to have matching funds before we can disperse any money. So in order to execute the contract, and I'll talk about the companies right now, because that's really the ones that it affects. I think you know this, but right now we use, per the statute, we use the federal indirect cost rate, as an offset for matching requirements for academic research grantees. That's been in our statute since 2013. That's worked well. As long as the academic institution has a federal indirect cost rate that's above 55% or 55% or above, then they have zero match. So that covers a lot of our grantees. And even for the ones that are, below 55%, sometimes they're below by 2% or 5%. So the match amount is much smaller. For the companies, they have to have match, hard dollars, not in kind, and it has to be money that is going to be spent at the same time that CPRIT's going to spend it. So we can't execute the contract until they can show us that they can certify that they have the funds available for that first tranche that we're going to release to them. And then at the end of that year, then we verify, compliance verifies that they spent the money, their matching funds on. And if they did not, if there is a deficit, then that grant gets put on hold. We can't disperse any more money until they make up the match. And we continue to monitor it. So it isn't specifically in our statute, but this is how we handle it through our contracts.
And this won't affect, I mean, current guarantee, people have already gotten grants already. It won't affect them, or it will, because if it's retro, that's what I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned
So-
about the new ones.
It will affect, we have to do the match certification every year. So it will affect current grantees. When something changes on, and so I assume you're talking about the academic research grantees and kind of the uncertainty on what's happening with the federal indirect cost rate. There, earlier this year in February, the federal government announced that they were going to change the federal indirect cost rate rather than having a negotiated cost rate to have it be, I think they had proposed strict 15%. So for many of our grantees, that is a huge change. We have some grantees that have a 60% federal indirect cost rate. So going from 60% to 15% not only would affect them on their federal grants and covering indirect costs, but it would affect them with the CPRIT grants because now they would be needing to show hard dollar match in a way that they had not before. That has all been put on pause while it's being litigated, how that change is going to happen. But I assume something will happen in the future where this will change. You will no longer have a negotiated federal indirect cost rate. You'll have some sort of federal indirect cost rate. So we will have to work with the academic grantees, and whether they're current grantees or future grantees, it will affect them. I'll add one more thing since I have the microphone. I should have said this when I was talking about the legislative update, but it reminded me when Vince was going through all of this. One piece of legislation that got passed that will affect CPRIT is the efficiency audit. They have passed legislation now for efficiency audits that will be operated through the state auditor's office. They appear to look very similar to a sunset review, so it's a complete analysis of what the agency does, whether they are doing things that are within their statutory purview, whether they are duplicating efforts of others, trying to root out inefficiencies. All we know right now is just what's in the statute. There hasn't obviously been any guidance around it yet, but the agencies that will be going through the efficiency audit are the agencies within 4 years of sunset review. So that puts CPRIT toward the front of the line. So we've already been notified by the state auditor's office that we will be subject to an efficiency audit. We're just waiting to see what that will be and when that will happen. But it will be an exhaustive effort, I think, that will affect, certainly compliance, certainly our chief financial officer and grant accounting, but probably every one of our programs, everything that we do, it will require a lot of work. So on that happy note, I'll give it back.
How exciting. Any other questions for Mr. Burgess? All right. Mr. Burgess, please move forward with your compliance certification.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings. So in your proposed grant award booklet, on page 40, you'll find my memo dated May the 9th. This was also made available to you in the portal. Again, I document each step in the peer review process, beginning with approval of the RFA all the way through the PIC recommendations. And I certify that the applications for your consideration today followed CPRIT's peer review process. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Burgess has provided the written report certifying that the proposed awards and review process complied with CPRIT statute and administrative rules. Are there any other questions for Mr. Burgess or the compliance reports? Hearing none, thank you very much, Mr. Burgess and your team. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
your efforts.
Thank you.
We'll now move to item 7, which is our program activities section. Our first report will come from the Chief Scientific Officer. We're pleased to welcome Dr. Scott Hebert as his first Oversight Committee meeting as our new Chief Scientific Officer, and welcome him to come deliver the introduction of the Program Integration Committee's grant award recommendations and the Academic Research Program update. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a tremendous honor to have been selected as the next Chief Scientific Officer of CPRIT. And I'm especially pleased to share this table with Michelle LeBeau. Michelle and I have been meeting for about the last 6-7 weeks. She's been training me, and she's just been fantastic. So I can't thank her enough, as well as Dr. Moore, who, as you heard, is retiring. I think today is actually her last official day at CPRIT before retiring, and she's been terrific. So I can't thank them enough for their help. And I will continue to lean on Michelle for the next 6 months, probably via email and calls, because her vast knowledge of CPRIT and grant making in general is just unmatched. And so I can't thank her enough for all the help. And I really look forward to working with you over the next several years. I'm really excited about this opportunity. And so I appreciate the confidence that the team has had in me in selecting me for this job. And I do want to just thank Kristen, Ms. Doyle. She's put together a fantastic team, the administrative team, and I'm just so impressed. This is day 20 and for me, and they've made this transition so easy. And I really want to thank them as well. So the report is under tab 4. And if we have the slides. So this is a little unusual. I'm presenting the Program Integration Committee's recommendations for the fiscal year 2025 review cycle 2. Let's see if we, and as well, the fiscal 25 recruitment cycles 25.7 and 25.8. This includes 15 awards totaling nearly $27.6 million. And it's a little unusual in that we've had some declines of grants. So we had a little extra money come forward. And so we've gone back to the SRC, the Scientific Review Council meeting in April 10, to consider some applications that were pending due to insufficient funds at the time. And so the SRC met again on July 23rd and brought 8 grants forward for review, for approval. And so we're excited to be able to put these applications forward. As you see on this first table, we have 15 grants. These cover a variety of different mechanisms. I just want to point out that especially the Trek Pilot Study Award, I think, is really exciting. The Core Facility Support Awards, I think, are really going to have a big impact across Texas. And of course, we're very excited to have an additional 6 first-time tenure track recruitments. And the next slide shows the program priorities that are being affected by these awards. And I want to highlight the childhood and adolescent cancers. We're approving $6 million or asking approval for $6 million in this area, as well as nearly $11 million in computational oncology and analytic methods, including some important artificial intelligence work. So I think it's really exciting. And then I think we're also going to be asking for approval for some really important work in prevention and early detection that's going to have a big impact across Texas. And then the next slide, we're going to go straight into some of the grants and introduce those. The 2 Core Facility Support Awards, I think, are quite exciting. The first is an accelerator for cancer medical devices coming out of the Texas Medical Center Foundation. This builds on some of their expertise in terms of other core facilities and designing programs that will take new ideas for devices from sort of conception all the way through business plan. And this is an application that we hope will have big impact for all of Texas. So that people from any part of Texas could use this core facility to develop an innovative device that would affect cancer outcomes. The next application, sorry, go back to the, oh yeah, here we go. The data science and AI core, I think is really a cool application, comes from UT Southwestern. And the goal here is to use AI to really impact, not only integrate population sciences, but to push this use of artificial intelligence into some of the rural hospitals to aid in early detection and prevention. So this comes from UT Southwestern, and they're hoping to push this out to their catchment area, which is sort of North Texas. So I think this is really exciting and has potential for really major impact. And now the next slide, we'll talk about some of the high impact, high research, high risk awards. Two of these, I just want to point out, have a little bit higher scores than we normally might expect, but this was just a really difficult study section. They did not give anybody an exceptional score. So, and this is kind of a trend at NIH. They're trying to push, there's no perfect grant, but that's why these are a little bit higher, because these are really two potentially very impactful applications. One is very cool, where they're using, the first by Dr. Belardi, is using a modified enzyme that is dead. And so he thinks that it will be able to identify lung cancer early. So he's modified it. And so you'll inject this and it'll home to the tumors and light up the tumors. And then he thinks he can also modify it by putting a drug on it and actually attack lung cancer. So really an innovative idea. Very cool. And then the second applications from the UT Southwestern. And this is a really interesting application because he's looking at an enzyme that makes ligands for nuclear hormone receptors. So it's like vitamins and how those receptors act, and wants to try and disrupt that signaling pathway. So very interesting and very innovative. And then the next slide shows our TREC Pilot Study Award. And this is really very interesting because this is what we call a synthetic lethal study, where if you have one mutation, you can then target something completely different, a different pathway. But if you have the mutation of the cancer, that is very dependent on this other pathway. And we don't really understand why. It's just a synthetic lethal interaction because they're both required. If this is happening, then this is required. And they even have a small molecule potential drug. It's a tool compound probably, but they can actually start testing whether they could intervene. And this is in an osteosarcoma, which there's been no new drugs in over 30 years. So this is very important and very exciting. So the next slide then shows some of our early clinical investigator awards that we're putting forward. And very, very cool, very impactful studies. Some bright physician scientists and Dr. Diamond at Baylor College of Medicine is studying a bispecific antibody. So it's an antibody that will grab two different antigens. And if this works, they'll be able to use an off-the-shelf CAR T kind of approach. So a cell therapy, and it would enhance that cellular therapy. And so very exciting. And so I think it's the perfect place to do a study like this at Baylor College of Medicine. They've got deep expertise. The second application here with the very same score is focused on prostate cancer and using novel ablative therapies, but trying to protect tissues around the prostate using a hydrogel. And this would allow them to do a much more intensive therapy without any side effects. So something that we're all very excited about. And then the next slide shows our third application. This is again from UT Southwestern, and very important problem in colorectal cancer, the peritoneal metastases, which are very difficult to treat. Dr. Kim has identified a new pathway that he thinks can be interrupted and have big impacts in these metastases. And if this is correct, he thinks that it could actually be used in ovarian cancer and other tumor types. So very exciting and very impactful proposal. And then the next slide, we want to move to our recruitment awards. And this is a really exciting recruitment award of an established investigator. Dr. Kozakov is one of the world's leaders in computational biology and using artificial intelligence. And he's actually building upon some of the work from the DeepMind study that won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2024 for what was called a program called AlphaFold. And he's using physics-informed modifications, and his algorithm actually seems to work better than what won the Nobel Prize for AlphaFold. And he's being recruited to UT Austin, just down the street. And he's going to use this novel artificial intelligence program to develop new drugs, classes of drugs called protacs and molecular glues, which allows us to go after really hard to drug targets like KRAS and MEK that are very frequently mutated in all types of human cancer. So this could be really impactful for all of Texas, and really excited about this. And then we have some first-time awardees that are shown on the next slide. Dr. Gardner and Dr. Romero are two fantastic investigators, with perfect scores of 1.0. And they're doing some really, really impactful work. Dr. Gardner's working on small cell lung cancer. Small cell lung cancer, terrible disease. It responds well to chemotherapy, and then the tumors relapse and the patient dies in 9 or 10 months. And it's terrible. And he's actually genetically engineered a mouse model to study this, and is really looking at these pulmonary neuroendocrine cells, which are probably the underlying cell that gets mutated to cause the cancer. And so very, very important work. And then Dr. Romero comes from Memorial Sloan Kettering, and he's working on neuroendocrine prostate cancer. So another prostate cancer biologist, and really looking at how this tumor suppressor, one of the first tumor suppressors identified, called the retinoblastoma tumor suppressor, mutated in eye cancers in children, but it's also mutated in prostate cancer. And he's looking at how this is going to impact our prostate cancer therapies. The next slide then shows Dr. Zi Zhang, as well as Tara Barron. Dr. Zhang is a chemist, and he's developed apparently a whole new series of chemical, like a new arm of chemistry. I especially enjoyed reading some of the letters of recommendation, and the one that really stood out to me was his current advisor. He said that he's a generational talent. I wish my advisor had used those terms. They didn't. These are the type of people that you feel just so good about recruiting, a generational talent. And actually the lab, they think the lab he's leaving and not even will study his work for another 5 to 7 years. So really fantastic, really impressive. And Dr. Barron is studying a really important new problem that we're just starting to appreciate. And that's how the neurons in the brain actually communicate with glioma for brain tumors. And she wants to understand that and see if you could disrupt that. So really important. And then the next slide has two investigators who are both studying metabolism, but they're in very different ways. Dr. Berger wants to identify every type of chemical switch that targets cysteine molecules. in proteins, and he wants to study them all, which is fantastic. I mean, very, very aggressive approach. So really love that. And then Dr. Yu is studying mitochondria and mutations in mitochondria. These are super hard to study because you can't control them like you can the genome. So it's really that metabolic rewiring that occurs in individual mitochondria and cells is really amazing. So this is a fantastic group of applications, and really pleased to present them from the Program Integration Committee. And then the next slide just talks about the submission data that we've had for the last year. 515 grants. It's a large number. It's not a record. We've had more in the early days, apparently, at CPRIT. But we expect to see more and more grants. But I think we're especially pleased to see the 12 applications for the early onset cancers. It's a problem that we'd really like to target more. And then, of course, it's nice to see clinical trials coming in with 31 applications. So yes, if we had $500 million, we'd be happy to fund all of these, because I'm sure they're all fantastic, but we'll have to make some hard choices. So next slide, please. So then the next RFAs for fiscal year 26.2 that we're putting forward are all fantastic. We have a couple of competitive renewals, applications that we funded 5 years ago. We're very pleased with. But I also want to highlight the Rural Oncology Trials Accelerator Awards. These are awards to establish the infrastructure and the pipelines for doing clinical trials in rural Texas. And then the recruitment or retention of clinical trialists would then be the companion to that. And that would be to recruit clinical trialists to carry out those awards, also focused in rural oncology. And then, of course, we're putting together a multi-investigator childhood and adolescents cancer survivorship multi-investigator grants. So these are fantastic applications or RFAs, and we're really excited about the impact that it might have in cancer. And the last slide then just talks a little bit about some of the webinars that actually Michelle is doing, because she's a fantastic person, and she's actually doing all the work here. I'm just doing the presentation. But she's already done the August 14th award webinar, and she'll be doing the one in later this week, or next week. So really appreciate her taking those on, which has allowed me to learn at a more reasonable pace. So I certainly appreciate that. And I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you very much for your report, Dr. Hebert. Do we have any questions? Yes, Dr. Rosenfeld.
First of all, welcome, Scott.
Oh, thank you so much.
Look forward to working with you. A few questions, since you're sort of new to CPRIT and relatively new to Texas. Maybe you could provide some perspective. So speaking from someone who's not been in Texas for a long time, what does the non-Texas world think of CPRIT?
The non-Texas, well, in terms of researchers, which is really my perspective, the non-Texas world is so jealous. You can't even comprehend how jealous the rest of the other 49 states are of Texas for this program. During my interview process, I was asked, well, why would you like to join CPRIT? And I was honest. I said, I'd like to be on the winning team for a change, because when we as like at Vanderbilt, when we're competing with any of the institutions in Texas, and we learn that that investigator has a CPRIT award, we just give up because we know that the person's going to go to Texas. It's that impactful. It's remarkable. It's fantastic. And now that I've been here and really understand all of the different things that CPRIT is doing, the impact that it's having across Texas is just remarkable. And yeah, everybody else is just jealous, just absolutely jealous of the impact and the thoughtfulness at putting together this program. And I don't think it's lost on anyone that in the last 16 years, you've seen major Texas institutions move up the ladder in terms of rankings. I don't think anyone questions that MD Anderson is now the best cancer center in the world. And it probably wasn't considered that 16 years ago before CPRIT. UT Southwestern moved up the ranks remarkably. Baylor College of Medicine. So the impact that everyone else sees is these rankings and things, and we lose recruits and things, but once you're here, you realize what the impact is in rural Texas, in addition to, the academic centers. And then you see the companies being launched. It's truly remarkable.
Thank you. I have one other comment. I really appreciate the availability of grants for early onset cancers. It's been a remarkable change during my years of practice. I can't tell you that, golly, when I started, there was no such thing as early onset colorectal cancers.
Yeah.
And now it's, oh, here's another case of early onset colorectal cancer. So I'm glad that CPRIT is taking charge and taking the lead and figuring out why this is happening and what we can do about it.
Yeah, I think it's super important. And, Michelle and I were chatting a little bit last night about, the differences between CPRIT and the NCI, the National Cancer Institute. And I actually, in reflecting on that, I think CPRIT is actually much more nimble and able to put RFAs together to really attack problems that the National Cancer Institute might take 2 or 3 years to figure out how to do it, or they'll just put a little bit of funds here. And I think CPRIT actually has the opportunity to make more impact in many cases. So it is really terrific. And I share your the early onsets are really heartbreaking. I lost a colleague from Vanderbilt to colon cancer when he was 45. And that's not super early, but still it's heartbreaking. And the child, the kids with cancer, of course, we want to keep pushing on that because these are just heartbreaking losses. So yeah, thank you.
Great comments. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you both for your efforts today. Mr. Burgess has certified compliance for the Academic Research Award process. It's my understanding that no Oversight Committee member reported a conflict with any of the proposed awards. Members, you have the list of applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for the Academic Research Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendation if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and voting agree. There are 6 Academic Research Award slates constituting 15 grant recommendations. Rather than taking a separate vote on each grant mechanism, I will ask for a vote to approve all the slates. If a member wants to consider one or more of the award recommendations separately from the vote on all the slates, please make a motion to do so now. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's 15 recommendations for the following Academic Research Grant Award mechanisms: Core Facility Support Awards, Early Clinical Investigator Awards, High Impact, High Risk Research Awards, TREC Pilot Study Award, Recruitment of Established Investigators, Recruitment of First-Time Tenure Track Faculty Members.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing approval from at least 2/3 of the members present and voting, the motion carries. I will now entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both very much for your report. Dr. LeBeau, thank you again for your help in our transition, and good luck. Now we're going to move to item 8, the Chief Prevention Officer report. The chair recognizes Mr. Carlton Allen, our interim Chief Prevention Officer, to provide the prevention program update. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank
Morning.
you, Oversight Committee members. The prevention report is behind tab 5 in your binders. It's going to be a short report, just a couple updates, but the prevention program released our first review cycle for FY 2026. That opened in the beginning of, or in the middle of February and closed in the middle of June. We actually received 53 applications from the prevention program, which is the most applications that we've had since FY 18. So you can see the need for prevention funding across the state. It's actually showing in the number of applications that we received, and it's a pretty even breakdown. And you can see that breakdown. We had 29 cancer screening and early detection applications, 23 primary prevention of cancer applications, and then 1 dissemination of CPRIT funded cancer control interventions. And with those 53 applications, applicants requested over $75 million. Because of the large amount of applications that we received and the amount that they asked for, it is very likely that we will have 1 cycle for FY 2026 because typically when we receive this amount of applications, we receive those applications get scored really well, and we're able to fund kind of the whole slate in 1 cycle. So we'll be speaking, or I'll be talking with our primary prevention review council to decide if one cycle will suffice for the prevention program. Other updates, I just wanted to highlight the American Cancer Society National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable recently developed a colorectal cancer screening in rural communities best practices guide. They had a whole webinar over it, but it's a pretty interesting guide, and I would encourage you all to take a look at it. And I've shared it with our grantees that are focused on colorectal cancer screening, and especially our one grantee that has the colorectal cancer coordinating board. And then the last update that I have for you is I'm working with a number of our grantees. We're presenting at the Healthier Texas Summit in Austin at the beginning of October, and we'll be doing a presentation on cervical cancer elimination, the prevention, screening, and treatment through CPRIT funded initiatives. So this will be a panel discussion with a number of our cervical cancer grantees and the work that they're doing across Texas. And that is it for my update. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Allen? Mr. Martin?
Carlton, are you, I know during 20 and 21 during COVID, we had a big reduction in the number of people being tested. And do you have any numbers? Everything you seem to look at these days always does a pre-COVID comparison to responses today. Are we back up to the full component, full cadre, whatever you want to say, of people really taking advantage of these prevention tests?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I think one that we're still looking at. It's hard to say for sure, but I think we are doing more screenings. I think partly that is that is where we are back to that levels, but I think the other part is, since that time, a lot of the guidelines have changed. Colorectal has lowered their screening age, so that means more screenings. Breast cancer has changed their guidelines a little bit. There's a more emphasis on lung cancer screening, which we're still trying to get a handle on. So I think we will continue to see kind of the uptick of screenings across cancer focuses.
Dr. Patel?
When you talk about cervical cancer and the diagnosis of it, early diagnosis, that is, there are now home care kits available. And would we be including that in terms of making sure that women who do not have access for a variety of reasons have access to these kits and will be tested? Because it's far easier to detect early and treat early rather than at the end stage, where particularly rural women come more with advanced stage and renal failure.
Yeah. I think that is one of the main reasons why sort of the cervical cancer and HPV vaccination world has focused on this cervical cancer elimination goal is, with the new FDA or fairly new FDA approval of those self collection tests. I think they are saying because of the access that allows now, we can have a real shot at eliminating cervical cancer, or getting fairly close to eliminating cervical cancer. Yeah, the prevention program funded in FY 2025 a self collection application through MD Anderson, and that program has been full steam ahead, and it's exciting to see the work that they've been reporting, and how they're working with federally qualified health centers across the state, and everything that they're doing with that.
So the follow-up question, sorry, is to say, when will we get reasonable data to look at and see the efficacy of it in terms of dissemination of those kits and then use of those kits?
Fairly soon. I am sure that they have some data that they can share, and I would love the opportunity to bring that to this committee and share some of that data. So thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
And I'll add very quickly while we're doing the transition, Mr. Allen mentioned the Healthier Texas Summit. And in my memo at page 12, so 212 in your book, we have several events that are coming up in September, October, and November. So before the next Oversight Committee meeting, where grantees, CPRIT grantees are going to be presenting, or CPRIT personnel. They're happening in Houston and Dallas, some in Austin. So please review those, and Oversight Committee members are certainly welcome to attend, and we'll keep you updated on that.
Thank you very much.
Kristen, could you email those events to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
Very good. We'll move on now to item 9, the Chief Product Development Officer report. Chair recognizes Dr. Ken Smith and Dr. Michelle Lewan to provide the Chief Product Development Officer's report. Good morning.
Good morning. The last time I came down to CPRIT, my office moved. And this time when I came there, my sports jacket moved. So I really can't wait to go back to the office and see what else is missing. So not to be outdone by academic research, we have 2 presenters today, just to keep up with them. With Dr. Michelle Lewan, who will do most of the presentation, and I'll sit here without my sports jacket.
Good morning. At least we are not cold without our jacket, so we're fine. So product development update will be 2 parts. And first, we will dive into the current status, where we are for the 26.1 grant cycle. So since last OC, we have completed our preliminary application reviews, invited 24 to submit full applications, and by the deadline, we received 23 applications. And starting from tomorrow, we're gonna review all those 23 applications. I think 2 weeks ago, I sent emails with registration link to those review sessions. So you are welcome to go online and maybe participate one or two of the 23 applications. I assure you, you won't be bored. It's very informative, educational. My best part at CPRIT is sitting through all those review sessions, learning from our reviewers, although it can be overwhelming if it's squeezed within 3 weeks. Next page, please. Thank you. So here's the table showing the number of preliminary applications and how many of them move into full applications. If we look at the table and the total request, we have historical number of applications due to many factors, including the current economic environment and the state of biotech research and product development. So from the 164 applications, seed application actually is almost half of the whole pool. But if we look at the ones that advance into full applications, still therapeutics, which we all know dominate our portfolio, and it's our intent. And actually, we're taking effort to try to diversify our portfolio. So therapeutics still very steadily, about 20% advance into full applications. And I want to highlight device and diagnostics. So although we received 20 applications, not like a whole exciting number, but we have 1/4 of those preliminary applications move into full applications. One dropped, which is a current grantee that experiencing some fundraising difficulties. So what do? We are very excited to see this number, and what we do to try to promote device and diagnostic project is we observe through previous review sessions that sometimes compared to those therapeutic panels, device and diagnostic panels can be more critical on the market adoption, and there will be more questions focused on how do you think the physicians will like to use your device. So our award by its name is focused on research. So part of our effort is going into reviewer education. We want them to shift focus that aligned with all the other award mechanisms, including therapeutics. So we still research emphasize the award mechanism. And another approach we took is we try to recruit more physicians. They will be the end users. They will have firsthand experience and they will know if they want to adopt those devices and those tools or not. So for new technology, we received 19 and only about 5% advance to full applications. See the award, a little bit over 10% advanced. Next page, please. So we take a deeper dive into the numbers, trying to, with the question that how can we promote seed and new technology mechanisms. So there are 12 panels. Each panel has 6 reviewers formed, and the applications are divided into the panels by their major subject area. And 5 of those 12 panels are seed awards. So we're making sure seed applications are compared among themselves, not to more advanced and full company project that asking more money. So that way we try to put allow each panel review the applications more or less at the same or similar level of stage of development level. Okay, so all the reviewers score their proposal and we take panel average. So you can see on this slide, the panel average range and standard deviations. Therapeutics has the, I would say, an even distribution, while take therapeutics as an example, and device and diagnostic has a narrower distribution compared to therapeutics. And new technology, both new technology and C, they're more shifted to the right compared to therapeutics. Next slide, please. Yes,
Sorry to interrupt you. Just a quick question on that slide.
previous one, please.
Previous slide, please. There we go. Well, I appreciate the statistics, so that's great. But I'm not sure, is the average, I guess that's the mean of all the grants?
So each we have 12 panels. Each panel has 6 reviewers.
It's the mean of
Every
panels.
reviewer will score each application they receive. So on average, each panel receives 13 to 14 applications. So they all score on those applications. And then for each application, we take the 6 numbers, 6 scores, and we average them. That's the average and standard deviation.
So that's the mean of each panel?
That's the mean. That's the mean of each panel for each application.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just for clarity, if I could follow on that last slide. Is the point of this that at some point, maybe you're comparing options and one may tend to score lower than the other, and so you might think that some of the therapeutics aren't scoring, or, I mean, why are you showing us this? I mean, is the goal to sort of, I mean,
The goal.
you don't want to have an absolute thing and say, let's just fund 2s, and you'd say we have a lot fewer 2s in one of the others. Is that the point?
So the way we divide our preliminary application is by subject and their subject matter. And like for certain indications, certain technology, or I put it this way, a panel may have therapeutics and new technology and devices if they are in the same research area. So we're not necessarily putting therapeutics in separate panels. And that way, I think it's it actually reduces the risk that you just mentioned.
So to follow on, is the purpose of this to show that some panels are tougher than score tougher than other panels?
It can be possible. And that's why when we make recommendations, we only take the top proposals. So we take into both factors, the average score and the ranking within the panel.
Just to add on to that, I think one of the things we've always kind of struggled with in the previous slide shows that is we are always heavily weighted therapeutic, right? And so we're trying to find out why that might be. And so we've done a couple different things, like all the seeds were together this time. We've tried times where they were just therapeutic panels and just device and diagnostic panels. So we're trying to look at most of this data and trying to figure out the best way to parse our panels to give the companies the best chance and not prejudice it to a particular type of technology.
The point could be that you'd say, given the amount of dollars we want to have in product development in a cycle, you could say we'd like to have, 40% be therapeutics and 30% to be something else. And we've never done that, I don't think.
No.
And I don't know that we do want to.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean,
you're trying
we've
to walk
thought of- yeah.
someplace.
And again, we've started from an area or position, really, we just want to take the best proposals. That's a little bit counterintuitive if you want to get something more of a standard distribution. So we kind of have to, if we want to have more seeds, if we want to have more new technologies, we may have to kind of manipulate it to some extent so that we get that distribution. Because again, like I said, there just still seems to be first of all, we have more therapeutic applications than anything else, and we try and get more and more of the other type. But it just seems that it's parsed that way, and it just works that way. And so looking backwards too, we could look at all the 70-some companies that we've done over time, and we could make a decision. We want to be in this area or that area. And it could be just not seeds. Well, what type of seeds do you want? Do you want them in device and diagnostics? Do you want the diagnostics? You want more devices or more diagnostics? And so we could and we should, and we will take a broader look at all the companies we have now that through this one now will be almost in the 80s. And then we could present that data to you and see whether it makes sense to try and fill certain gaps, that we might perceive in our portfolio.
Thank you. I would just make the last comment that this might be one of these subjects for our secret retreat, which would be very interesting to dive into for an hour rather than just.
Ken, just one more quick question to consider. Should our emphasis be on diversification of portfolio, or should it be on return on investment? And the reason I ask that is, of course, the best potential return on investment is therapeutics.
But the time frame is so long.
Yeah.
So you almost want to fill in. I mean, we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah,
But Kristen,
I'm not going to ask any more questions.
Well, Kristen alluded to the fact that, we were talking about return on investment with attachment D. This should be part of that conversation as well, because that's certainly going to influence it. If at this point in time, we're only going to do therapeutics, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I probably won't be around. So, that's a long-term kind of project. So we want to fill in with like devices and diagnostics, which have, maybe even 3 to 5 year time frame where you get some return. So, but I do think that's a really good conversation that we can have at this retreat.
And you could certainly say seed is the best value, although it's the longest turnaround.
Well, years ago, we talked about the fact that we were comparing what commercial VCs were doing and where we could fit in, that they weren't. So, we back to, there was a discussion of, I think there was a gap with seeds and the others, and we were saying, okay, well, maybe we should fill this in or what. And so
I cringe with the term return on investment. These aren't investments, these are grants, right? Yeah. There's a different mentality really when it comes to grants. And going back to your point, the idea was to fill a gap that the VCs weren't filling. And are we going to, again?
And are we still doing that or not? And that's kind of this whole debate. And I agree with Bill, that's a retreat debate.
I've moved to allow the presentation to continue.
Next slide, please. So here's a most straightforward distribution of the average scores. Next slide, please. And this slide, I put them in clusters. So different mechanism are color coded. The score ranged from 1 being the best with 6 being the worst. So we can see all all applications actually clustered. There are 2 peaks, one between 2.5 and 3.5, and the other between 4 and 5. So most of the applications, regardless of their mechanism, are distributed in those 2 clusters. So I think there's a fair distribution and also reflects a fair evaluation of the applications. Still, with therapeutics more to the right of this left of the spectrum, and seed and new technology more to the right of the spectrum. So that is our 26.1. And again, review sessions start morning tomorrow. Y'all invited to log on and see we battle. So, and the second part of our update, next slide, please. Oh, sorry. I have made some maps. So this is the geographic distribution of our full applications. As we can see, there are 8 states. Texas still has the most numbers. And outside of the Texas, we see applications from the traditional hubs of biotech, like the East and West Coast and the Great Lake area. Next slide, please. In-state or Texas applications are from 7 counties. Actually, the county map doesn't really ring a bell to me unless it's election season. So next slide, please. I quickly forget about that after casting my vote. So city makes more sense. And most of the applications still from Houston, which we have the Texas Medical Center. Outside of Houston, we see there are 2 from Austin, Cedar Park, and 2 from Dallas, Arlington, and Plano. Waco is pretty close to Dallas, so it's almost the same metro. And then College Station, of course, home of Aggies, has to stand alone. Next slide, please. So here is the real second part of our update. And we do pay on-site visit with our to our grantees biannually. So last time we did it in 2023. And this time we took the window between completion of preliminary applications and starting of full application reviews to go visit 21 grantees in Dallas and Houston area. So what we observed is 2 years ago, we spent like almost 80% of time sitting down with the grantees and talking about delayed goals and objectives, extension of grant time, and mitigation plans. Well, this time, I'm happily spent a lot fewer, like shorter time discussing about risk and mitigations, but instead we are learning new data, and they use data from like early readings into interim readings to guide the later parts of their research plans. So we have seen data-driven refinements in like, they change the enrollment eligibility, and they change their modifications to trial design, and their modifications in their R&D to pursue like the lead, the drug lead compositions. And also we observe some operational change, like some grantees switch to Texas CROs, some grantees are exploring alternative contractors to have backups in case there are delays in manufacturing. So they're taking preventive steps before actually encounter an issue. And also excitingly, we see some early clinical activity, and we see complete response in during the trial, which Sarah, our grantee, will tell you more about it. And multiple phase 2 are active right now, and some of them are in Texas. And we have specific indication-specific expansion cohort, and we have cohort with no dose-limited toxicity and early cancers, circulating tumor DNA and lesion size reductions, and grantees are using those interim readings in their fundraising effort. Next slide, please. So we saw the change and what caused the change. On CPRIT side, we did implement some, take some extra steps to make sure that we are staying close to our grantees, and we're not only in a way to monitor their compliance, but also as a partner to see them grow, to grow with them. So one is the bi-weekly PDRC presentation. We invited our grantees to present to the PDRC, the 12 experts in the field of cancer research, and they have their own network. So when grantee present to them, they not only present progress towards the milestones, they also ask questions, and they also ask for help. Our PDRC council members are able to comment on their science, make suggestions in research, as well as clinical trial design. They are often also sharing their network, referring regulatory expertise, and sometimes even make connections for fundraising. In addition to the annual progress report, we also collect quarterly progress report to identify any issues and spot any changes early on, not wait until the year end, because our award are 3 years. So there are only 3 times we can check, but this way we have more checkpoint. And this quarter's progress report is very brief, and we don't even send out to our reviewer council. So CPRIT staff, we review it, make a quick check, and then if there are any issues, we talk to the grantees directly. And we all know that 25.2 supplemental award is our new award mechanism last year, and we use it to encourage and reward our grantees, current active grantees that making good progress and there's a gap to be filled. And that's all awards except the on-call response. We're still waiting on milestones to activate. All the supplemental awards are activated. And the last one is the biannual grantee visit. We go sit down with the team, tour their facility, look at the labs, and glad to see those instruments. CPRIT instrument has CPRIT stickers on it, and took pictures. So we sit down, discuss their research, their plans, new data, and also, if possible, any change to their planned research. Next slide, please. On the grantee end, so there are some changes as well. So with each subtitle, there's a number that means how many grantees out of the 21 that we visited apply to that category. So we have grantees like 5 out of 21 and conduct early interaction, communicating with the regulatory agencies, and they centralized IRBs to streamline the process and to pave the way for later site activation and patient enrollment. And also signal first decision. So based on data they collected, based on research discoveries, and they pivot and adjust, revise the plan as the project goes. And early readings from a trial, the results, if encouraging, exciting results can be used in fundraising concurrently as the trial is ongoing. And we do see, it's very common for us to see slow enrollment, not as expected. So companies are activating more locations and try to adjust, change the language of recruitment criteria to try to boost up enrollment. And also manufacturing difficulty is a common issue as well. So companies are taking active steps towards those, like dual source, having backups, and speed up their production. And we see quite some contracting with in-state CROs. Next slide, please. So for the delays and risks that we identified, we put them into 5 buckets. So the first panel are the risks. For each risk, we sit down with the team and discuss what's the plan, how can we speed up the project and get it back on track. So again, the number shows how many grantees out of the 21 are facing a particular issue. And then the bars on the right-hand side are the definite approach that the companies are taking to mitigate the risks. So for each mitigation approach, we have a definite date attached to it for later revisiting. So mainly the risks have come like site startup delays and their operational problems, and sometimes like if a company is contracted, is gonna do their trial as an investor initiated trial, a lot of those investigators are affected more or less by the federal agency, NIH change, etc. And enrollment delays, which sometimes is unpredictable, but for virus, like one of our grantee studies, virus infection in cancer patients. So viral infections are seasonal. So they are pivoting this, or they adjust to the change by looking at the winter window, and also move their sites to more northern area where the viruses are, where we see more cases of infections. And single vendor exposure. So again, have backup plans, and both in production and also in service contractors. And a lot of them has cash runway constraints. So they are thinking creative ways, like in trying to raise funds outside of the country and try to apply to grants for non-dilutive fundraising. And also, as using interim result to talk to investors and in fundraising activities. Next slide, please. So this is my last one, showing Texas impact that we observed during our on-site visits. So a lot of, we're happy to see that many companies are activating their clinical site here in Texas, and infrastructure manufacturing enhancement. So we, in FY23, we invested in CDMO manufacturer, and the company CTMC actually is generating revenue serving the community. And they are also boosting up their production by doubling the shift and acquiring another floor within the building to expand their facility. And not only manufacturers, but also our drug discovery companies are trying to sign contract with in-state CROs to bring in manufacturing to Texas. A lot of our grantees are hiring new employees in Texas, and also as well as training the workforce at different levels, undergrad, graduate student, and postdoc as well. And capital leverage, so CPRIT, actually having the CPRIT award is a big plus when our grantees go out and try to fundraise, talking to investors. And we try to stand behind them when needed. Ken will share his expertise in IP due diligence, and we can back them up and support their fundraising activities. And patient access, like with increased Texas clinical site, we are serving a broader Texas patient population as well. So the other day, while I was at Texas Medical Center, I met a lady who was diagnosed stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And she was in good shape because she enrolled in a clinical trial. So the trial drug actually worked fine and helped her to be in remission then. Okay, so that is our report. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your report. I think we'll reserve any further questions for offline, or perhaps at our retreat when we can flesh out some of these issues. We're going to move on to item number 10. The chair recognizes Ms. Doyle to present her appointments to the Scientific Research Prevention Program Committees and the fiscal year 2026 honorary policy.
And And I will add one point to follow up. This may be a connection that you guys noticed, but in an award that you just recently approved, the Accelerator for Drugs and Devices. So this is a core facility that's out of the Texas Medical Center. And, it again is kind of that synergy between academic research and product development. We've been talking about ways that we can encourage more devices and diagnostics. So we have been funding, CPRIT has been funding for the past 5 years, the Accelerator for Cancer Therapeutics, also out of TMC. You'll hear today from one of the companies that came out of that. So we've funded several CPRIT companies that have come out of the ACT program, and we're hopeful that we'll see that same progression for the devices and diagnostics. So just a little connection there for you. In terms of the Scientific Research and Prevention Program Committee appointments, and that's a term of art that's used in our statute. It's our peer reviewers. We have 35 appointments. We provided the bio sketches in the electronic book that you got, but it's a lot of paper to copy. So it's not in your in your physical books. The Board Governance Subcommittee recommended these 35 for approval, and in each of the program subcommittees also, they talked about the appointments.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Doyle regarding these appointments? Is there a motion to approve the CEO's 35 appointments to the Scientific Research and Prevention Program Committees? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I also have in the meeting book our fiscal year 2026 honoraria policy. You guys know we approve the honoraria policy every year at the August meeting for looking forward. So this is, lists the amounts that we pay, why and how we calculate that, and the various tasks that our peer reviewers do. There are no changes to the honoraria from fiscal year 2025.
Very good. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 honoraria policy?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we move to item 11 on our agenda, which is advisory committees. The chair recognizes Ms. Doyle to present the presiding officer's new appointments to the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee and the Product Development Advisory Committee.
So we have one new appointment to the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee, Kevin Penny, and then we have 3 new appointments to the Product Development Advisory Committee, including Dr. Hine, who will be presenting as part of the Product Development Advisory Committee presentation. I also will note, in addition to these 4, we also have a new person serving on the University Advisory Committee, Dr. Clegg. You guys don't vote on that one. The way our statute is set up is that they are nominated by their chancellors, and then they are on the University Advisory Committee. So you will vote on these 4.
Any questions for Ms. Doyle regarding these appointments? Is there a motion to approve the 4 appointments to the Geographic Diversity Advisory Committee and the Product Development Advisory Committee?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move to our advisory committee presentations. We'll have 2 presentations today, first by the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee and then by the Product Development Advisory Committee. We'll call now Dr. Hebert to introduce Dr. David Gerber to present the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee report. Welcome, Dr. Gerber. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure for me to be able to introduce Dr. David Gerber, one of the world's experts on the design implementation of clinical trials, one of our co-chairs. He is a professor in the Department of Internal Medicine, especially hematology oncology at the Peter J. O'Donnell School of Public Health, the University of Texas Southwest Medical Center. Within the Harold C. Simmons Comprehensive Cancer Center, he's held numerous positions, including co-leader of the Experimental Therapeutics Program, and he also has served as Associate Director for Clinical Research. He currently serves as co-director of the Office of Education and Training. And he's obviously very distinguished with many awards. And he's had multiple CPRIT awards. But I think what really stands out to me in his record is that in 2022, he received an NCI Director's Merit Award, which is very, very competitive. So really, it's a pleasure to have really an expert in the design, implementation, and conduct of clinical trials come and present this the Clinical Trial Advisory Committee report. Dr. Gerber.
Great. Well, thank you for the very kind introduction, and it's good to see all of you again now in my second year. I'll take the next 20 minutes or so to provide an update for our fiscal year 2024 for the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee. During this time, I'm going to focus on what we think are some of the greatest clinical research challenges, our recommendations and accomplishments, our clinical trial activities, and then I'm going to spotlight a number of specific programs, including the Clinical Investigator Award, the Clinical Trial Participation Award, the Clinical Trial Network Award, and then 2 new awards that were issued earlier this month, the Rural Oncology Trials Accelerator Award and Recruitment or Retention of Clinical Trialists Award. So I think if there's a theme that's been undercutting our discussions in the last year, it's that the people trying to do cancer clinical research are facing greater challenges than ever. So as an example, our CTAC member and former chair, Gail Eckhart, co-authored an American Society of Clinical Oncology recommendation on promoting reasonable career expectations and maximizing professional fulfillment for academic oncologists. And also earlier this year, I led a study through the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, or NCCN, where we studied protected time, resources, and expectations for academic oncology clinical research physicians. So I think we as CTAC are trying to make things better for these academic oncology physicians, but also working to empower other individuals in other settings so they too can design, conduct, and analyze cancer clinical trials. So these have been our recommendations to broaden representation to other professional groups and other regions of the state, to further refine our clinical trial focused RFAs to ensure diverse access and enrollment, to consider potential new RFAs, specifically those focused on community and rural sites, and also expanding trial infrastructure at Texas Regional Excellence in Cancer, or TREC eligible institutions, to continue our working group monthly meetings, and to hold again annual in-person CTAC meetings. During this fiscal year, we achieved all of these. I'll discuss the first 3 points in detail later on. It is really through our monthly working group that we've been able to formulate and release the 2 new RFAs this year. And we did hold an annual in-person CTAC meeting at Baylor in Houston last fall, and we'll have another one later this year. I'd like to turn my attention now to our 3 new CTAC members since the last time I presented. These individuals expand our expertise and representation. So April Bell, shown at the top, as a clinical research manager at John Peter Smith in Fort Worth. I'll take a moment and explain why I think this is a really important addition to our group. Clinical research professionals, whether they're managers, coordinators, or data specialists, in reality probably know a lot more about the details of designing, implementing, and conducting cancer clinical trials than any physician does. She's the first such individual on this committee. She also represents a safety net healthcare system. Secondly is Everardo Cobos, the chair of the Department of Medicine Oncology at UT Rio Grande Valley School of Medicine. He's our first committee member from the South Texas region. And third is Jeff Yorio from the Capital Region and Texas Oncology in Austin. He brings expertise in multi-center clinical research because he's the site research leader for all of Central and South Texas for that practice. I'll take a moment and spotlight the CPRIT Clinical Investigator Award. In contrast to the Early Investigator Award, this RFA supports mid-career clinician scientists who are trained in oncology practice so they can devote more time to augment their capabilities in clinical cancer research. and mentor early investigators who are doing their own work. The award is up to $1.5 million and 5 years. This grant fulfills critical gaps. In 2017, the NCI stopped funding its Mid-Career Investigator Award, the K-24. I know this personally because I received the last NCI K-24 ever awarded. And that award allowed me to remain in a career in cancer clinical research to this day. And I think it's because of a drop in mid-career funding nationwide that we have seen in recent years among those faculty who are actually good enough to get early career awards, the proportion who then leave academia and research-related careers after that has doubled. So you can see already the impact of some of these awards, and I show 4 examples. These individuals come from different institutions representing different regions of the state and different clinical expertise: radiation oncology, pediatric hematology oncology, and adult medical oncology. Their research covers such timely topics such as artificial intelligence, immunotherapy, dietary interventions, and cell therapies. And as you can see from these publications, they're already demonstrating continued and enhanced academic productivity. As for our clinical trial enrollment supported by CPRIT, I'm proud to show you that our total trials are now 372 to date. That is a 17% increase from last year's 307. Our active trials total 147, a 20% increase compared to last year's 122, and our total enrollment at 63,782, an 11% increase over last year's 57,336. The map at the top right shows you the sites of our interventional trials, representing most regions within Texas. Our observational trials cover even greater ground, and you'll see multiple sites in the Upper Rio Grande and South Texas regions. We have 2 ongoing CPRIT-supported mechanisms that are specifically designed to enhance access to clinical trials. The Texas Clinical Trial Participation Award, currently active at Baylor and UT Southwestern, and the Clinical Trial Network Award, currently active at MD Anderson and the Simmons Cancer Center at UT Southwestern. So as a reminder, the Clinical Trial Participation Award recognizes the financial burden that cancer clinical trials can place on patients. We know that a cancer diagnosis itself causes major financial strain. More than 3/4 of people with a cancer diagnosis stop working during treatment, and more than 1/3 spend their life savings within 2 years of diagnosis. Imagine what a clinical trial can do. You've got extra visits, so that's less time at work and more travel. People face an average of $600 per month in non-medical costs when they're on cancer clinical trials, and lower income individuals have to travel further to get to sites that have clinical trials. As a result, individuals with household incomes below $50,000 a year are 30% less likely to enroll on trials, and only 5% of trial enrollees are Medicaid recipients. When you ask patients how would they feel about getting support for things like lodging and transportation, 80% say that would help them participate in trials. Members of CTAC participated in the EACT, the Early Access to Clinical Trials program, earlier this year, and authored a statement on financial toxicity in cancer clinical trials, an issue in need of clarity and solutions. That was published in the preeminent oncology journal, Journal of Clinical Oncology, and you'll see that support from CPRIT is recognized in the publication. There are more gaps that we're filling than ever before. So we've all heard about national legislation in the works for years: the Harley-Jacobson Clinical Trial Participation Income Exemption Act and the Clinical Trial Modernization Act. This is to allow reimbursement of non-medical costs and make sure that it's not considered taxable income. Despite years in the work, they remain in their infancy in terms of legislative stage. More importantly, since I spoke to you last in November of 2024, the Lazarus Impact closed its operations. The Lazarus Impact program was a national effort to provide and study reimbursement for non-medical costs on cancer clinical trials. It was actually the example template that this CPRIT RFA was built on. Because of lack of financial support that it received from industry partners, it closed its operations. This CPRIT-funded example is the largest such operation nationwide by a clear margin at this point. In fact, later this year, the Lazarus Cancer Foundation, which has been in operation for almost 20 years, will cease altogether. So what have we done through this program that allows us at multiple sites to provide and study reimbursement for non-medical costs for patients on cancer clinical trials? We have reimbursed almost 100 patients at the UT Southwestern site alone, allowing them to enroll and remain on clinical trials. As a reminder, you'll see at the bottom that all of these individuals to qualify have to be Texas residents, have income less than 700% the federal poverty rate, and the reimbursement is on a sliding scale, ranging between 50 and 100%. And at the Baylor site, you'll see an example of a growing clinical trials navigation team. As for the Texas Clinical Trial Network, it has continued to expand its reach and impact. We now total 10 sites across Texas, and our two newest sites, Covenant Health in Lubbock and Hendrick Medical Center in Abilene, for the first time show that we're expanding beyond that I-35, I-45 corridor to start to get to that vast reach of Western Texas that historically has had less access to cancer clinical trials. You'll also note that two of our sites, JPS in Fort Worth and LBJ in Houston, are designated safety net healthcare systems for those regions. Our accomplishments over this past year, in addition to that West Texas expansion, we held our third annual webinar for sponsors and contract research organizations to learn about our operations and opportunities. In total, it was our largest webinar ever with over 160 attendees. And for the first time, we had attendance from health system leadership throughout our network. These are the CEOs, CMOs, and CFOs of these healthcare systems. If they're not convinced that cancer clinical trials are critical to their overall operation, we're going to continue to struggle. We've activated 28 trials since this time last year, with 41 in startup. The network has joined the Genentech Advancing Inclusive Research, or AIR Site Alliance. That means that these sites get access to choose Genentech cancer clinical trials before 95% of other institutions in the United States. Similarly, the network joined a partner program of the contract research organization IQVIA, and we have increasing site experience and exposure. And JPS continues to be a hallmark example of that. Remember that JPS had done no cancer clinical research until it joined this network 3 years ago. Since I last spoke to you, JPS has published 2 articles of their own cancer research in peer-reviewed publications, and JPS personnel now interact directly with important partners without any oversight from lead institutions such as UT Southwestern and MD Anderson. The photo shows JPS coordinator and PI meeting with Pfizer at ASCO, and JPS coordinators and managers, these clinical research professionals, 2 months ago, were flown themselves to Eli Lilly headquarters in Indianapolis to provide guidance on protocol design to make it reasonable for patients to participate. Let's turn to our new CPRIT supportive mechanisms that will further enhance access to clinical trials. The Rural Oncology Trials Accelerator Award, posted earlier this month. Applications will be open until December of this year, with an anticipated start in June of next year. And the Recruitment or Retention of Clinical Trialists Award, also posted earlier this month, 3 upcoming submission cycles and potential starts of June and August 2026. These awards also fill important gaps that persist. We know that patients in rural areas have access to fewer clinical trials because cancer clinical research continues to be consolidated in major urban centers throughout the country. The CPRIT Clinical Trial Network has expanded greatly, but it's not yet reached that Upper Rio Grande, High Plains, or South Texas regions of the state. And the fact is that for trial networks to be successful, the participating sites have to have engaged and experienced and supported clinical champions on site to work. The Rural Oncology Trials Accelerator Award will establish or enhance clinical trial capacity in rural and underserved communities. It provides seed funding for infrastructure, staffing, and operational support so that these sites in rural underserved areas become trial ready to participate in industry or cooperative group sponsored cancer clinical trials. Sites can use this funding to partner with site management organizations or SMOs that could give them turnkey startup services. And eligible entities include community oncology practice, critical access hospitals, federally qualified health centers, or safety net providers in rural or medically underserved areas in Texas, including TREC eligible institutions. This is up to $900,000 and up to 3 years of funding. And lastly, the Recruitment or Retention of Clinical Trialists Award. Here we are providing support so we can recruit or retain experienced clinical trialists from any oncology-related clinical discipline to lead cancer clinical research programs in rural and underserved communities within the state of Texas. And this funding can be used to recruit and retain qualified investigators that would be considered at the equivalent academic level of early career, mid-career, or established assistant, associate, or full professors. And here eligibility also includes TREC eligible institutions. The total costs here for funding will depend on the rank of the individual that's being supported, ranging from $2 million for assistant professors up to $3 million for full professors, and a total of 5 years. That brings me to the end of my update, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gerber. It's amazing work that's been done, even in the years since you were here last. We appreciate you greatly. I have a question. The clinical trials navigation support team, who would ideally be a part of that team?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. So the centers that participate in the Clinical Trial Participation Award have chosen to use some of that funding to actually staff their programs with clinical trial navigators.
Yes.
So these are not the same as clinic nurses, and they're not the same as clinical research coordinators. They're not there to talk about eligibility. They're not there to evaluate adverse events or adherence to the protocol. They are there to enhance what a clinician might have to say about what does it mean to be on a cancer clinical trial? Why might it not actually be just being a guinea pig and something that could really benefit you as a patient, regardless of what arm you're assigned to? It's someone who can find out, where does this person live? What is their job? What are the hardships they're facing even before going on a cancer clinical trial, to help address things like transportation and really connect them to the participation program so they can be enrolled in it and get reimbursement for those costs.
So you answered my second question, which is part of the funding is being used to support this navigation team to be in place. Is every patient that enrolls in a clinical trial automatically referred to this team, or is there a distress screening or some type of referral that gets them involved at the beginning?
Yeah, so in terms of clinical trial navigation, I think disparate systems have chosen to implement it in different ways. Both in Houston and in Dallas, we have chosen to consider patients in the safety net systems potentially universally benefiting from navigation systems and the reimbursement programs. When you're dealing outside of the safety net system, we initially wanted to take a universal approach and discuss the reimbursement program and navigation with all patients. We found that that was both low yield and might have been confusing to patients who come from, example, the Park Cities and have seven-figure incomes. So within the university side of operations, we've started to tailor it a little bit more. And for that reason, the yield on approach patients who wind up getting navigation services and being enrolled in the reimbursement program has gone up. Now, when you do that, could you miss someone if you're not hitting everyone universally? You could, but as the clinical operations grow, we also realize that to be practical, it's probably not feasible right now for navigation teams to automatically reach every patient with cancer who's being considered for a trial at all sites.
Yeah. I would suggest that maybe some of these teams could consider when the patients come for potential participation visits, that they be given a distress screening to fill out themselves, that then could potentially, based on that score, be a referral to the team. Coming from treating cancer in a rural area, I can tell you it's shocking how many people will meet the criteria for distress screening. And I really thought that was a really great thing that you're adding into the program and the protocol, and it will yield results. So
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point. And the centers that are the greatest at are those safety net centers, but it's the ones where you do get more heterogeneity, where you could argue it's even more important to allow us to tailor the focus.
thank you so much. Mr. Margot.
I noticed you don't have any members of your CTAC committee from the Upper Rio Grande. Are you recruiting anybody from the Upper Rio Grande or at all?
Yeah, so that's a great point. There are still some regions that we don't have representation of. There's been a lot of talk about interacting with UTEP, and at our annual meeting every fall is when we really tend to sit down as a group and discuss future recruitment, and that'll be a priority.
Yeah, especially if you're going to work on rural areas, and we do a lot of prevention grants at it. We just, in May, we gave 5 million basically to Texas Tech, El Paso, because of the screenings, and I think they're doing like 60 counties or something like that. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that's an
I
important
think
point.
that
And again,
this will be important for you
this
to
will
have
be,
a representation.
yeah, it'll be a committee-wide decision, but I also I'm going to encourage that we prioritize other non-MD members, because they just bring a perspective and expertise, one or two more, that could completely change our perspective.
Mr. Montgomery.
Very quickly, Dr. Gerber, thank you very much for all the work and for the presentation. The clinical trial enrollment figures, are those for all time or just this past year?
So what you see in the bottom box, the first bolded number is cumulative. And then what you'll see where it says from and another number underneath that, those are last year's.
Okay.
So the difference I gave you in percentages ranging between 11 and 20%, depending on the metric.
And how do you compare those numbers with other places, other institutions, other programs? I mean, is this a high number for a state of our size? Is it a high number for the number of institutions we have? Is it a low number? How do you have any frame of reference for the enrollment numbers? Is it possible to?
Well, so in terms of comparing to other states, I actually don't. They may exist, but I think we all recognize that Texas leads the nation in thinking statewide about cancer. There is an entity known as the California Cancer Consortium, but I do think that's more limited in scope than what CPRIT is doing. I would say that given all of the challenges that we face in enrolling patients to cancer clinical trials, strict eligibility, difficulty in transportation, the fact that an additional 6,000 patients were enrolled to CPRIT clinical trials since I spoke to you last year certainly impresses me. It does.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rosenfeld.
David, that was a wonderful presentation and congratulations. It's been a lot of progress. I have two quick questions regarding your trial network map. And one's sort of a follow-up to Mr. Margot's question. And that is, I look at the map and I see some holes in the map. Most notably, the things that jumped out to me were lack of sites in Amarillo. And also appears that San Antonio has no sites. And also Brownsville. So some of my favorite cities aren't on the map. And I I hope that there'll be action on those fronts.
Yeah,
The-
I agree completely.
The other is, I was wondering with increasing number of sites, if it would be helpful for accrual to have a uniform consent form. So as you know, consent forms could be changed at every institution and they have to be resubmitted and takes a long time. Well, do you think there's possibility of your trial network putting together this institution to have a standard consent form and maybe a statewide approval instead of an individual institution approval for protocols?
Yeah, so that's a really great point. So, when you activate a cancer clinical trial, there are so many steps, right? There's the regulatory approval, the ethical or IAB approval, and then all of the site contracting. The network is positioned and is designed to potentially have shared IRB review. That is something that is built into the network. It's interesting how that would look. I think different centers are considering implementing that in different ways. In reality, IRB review is one of the fastest steps in getting a trial activated. When we do activate trials within the network, and this is, I think, also similar to trials outside of the network, in general, a clinical trial sponsor will provide a consent form that then it may be customized to the site, but that customization is usually limited to changing the names of the coordinators, the principal investigators, and the contact phone number. The centers that take much more time to really go through these things and take a lot longer to approve trials, I'm reluctant to say, are the academic centers. So the fact is that one of the things that I brag about when I speak to sponsors about our network is that within the UT Southwestern based network, the other 4 sites activate trials in less than half the time that it takes to activate a trial at UT Southwestern. That is not UT Southwestern specific. That is the nature of being in an academic medical center versus not an academic medical center. And we need to get much better. But I do think you're right. Continuing to find ways that the network can streamline the experience for trial sponsors and for the sites is really critical. An area where I'd really like to think about that is, the contracting and the budgeting, something that takes a very, very long time. And we're still working through what that would look like.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr.
One
Rice.
very brief, but first to say thank you so much. Maybe second to say, I think that the Oversight Committee is highly interested in this, so I hope we can welcome you back frequently. Really, the question I wanted to ask, which is more to invite you to give us this information next time, or maybe via email or something, but I'm interested in what's the denominator like. I don't know what the resource is. It's kind of to your question, Mr. Montgomery, is like, how many people are in cancer clinical trials in Texas? I'd be interested in the denominator, even if it was a very rough estimate, because what I'm trying to get to is that if we have 63 or 6,000 incrementally, is CPRIT increasing by 10% the overall clinical trial footprint of cancer patients in Texas, or is it increasing it by 50%? Or I just wonder if we have a way to know what the scope of the impact is.
Yeah, so I think that's a wonderful question. I will tell you, we have tried for my entire career, even at our own site, to try to get a sense of what proportion of potential patients go on trials and what are the reasons patients don't. And for example, when you're at a tertiary referral academic medical center, you have patients who have no desire to get treated there, right? They just come in for an opinion, a second opinion, and then they go back to where they live. And so do they get counted in the denominator? These are really interesting questions, but there's no doubt that for a very, very rough estimate, one could, determine the number of new cancer cases per year within the state of Texas. And then compare that to the number of patients enrolled in clinical trials. Now, I'll caution you on that, right? By far, the most common cancer diagnosis in the United States is non-melanoma skin cancer. So these are basal cell carcinomas and squamous cell carcinomas that are shaved off by dermatologists. They never have any other clinical relevance and they never see oncology practitioners. Do we need to take them out of the denominator? So it's important to think about.
But let me clarify my point. I'm not so interested in what the denominator of all cancer is. I'm saying, are there 100,000 patients in clinical trials today and 60,000 of them are from CPRIT funded clinical trials or things that are in our purview? I'm trying to figure out what
I
our
see.
CPRIT
So
impact is.
determining the denominator of all enrollment to cancer clinical trials in Texas.
Exactly. And
That I don't know. I don't know if that's publicly available, to be honest
So
with
I'm
you, but
looking
it's a
forward to
fair
your estimate.
question. Yeah.
Good luck. All right. Any further questions for Dr. Gerber?
Great.
All right.
All right. Good
Thank you
seeing you
very
all
much.
again. Thank
Excellent
you.
presentation. Appreciate you. We'll move next to our second advisory committee presentation, the Product Development Advisory Committee. Dr. Lawan, will you introduce Mr. Andrew Strong and Dr. Michelle Park to present the Product Development Advisory Committee report?
Morning. PDAC presenters, our chair and vice chair of Product Development Advisory Committee, and also one of our grantee representatives, Dr. Sarah Hine. And Mr. Andrew Strong is an experienced and trusted advisor and counsel to public and private life science, pharmaceutical, emerging technology, global clients on matters involving corporate formation, public and private financing, M&A, cross-border licensing and joint ventures, employment and executive compensation and intellectual property. Andrew previously served as general counsel and compliance officer for the Texas A&M University System, where he was responsible for, among other things, technology commercialization, business contracting, litigation, and board governance for the systems, universities, and state agencies. He has experience starting up and selling a successful biotech company that has grown to over 900 employees, has served and presently serves as the general counsel for several private and public traded drug development biotech clients, and has served as a board member and in leadership positions for NYSE, NASDAQ, and private corporations. Dr. Michelle Park is a partner of New Enterprise Associate, also vice chair of PDAC. Michelle joined NEA in 2021 as an investor on the healthcare team focused on biopharma space. Prior to NEA, Michelle was an investor at life science focused venture capital firm, Claris Venture, where she led the initiative to launch the Claris Cancer Fund, a novel investment model designed to generate returns and fuel cancer research through donation. Before Claris, she spent her time in biotechnology research analyst roles at Credit Suisse and Piper Jaffray. Michelle received her PhD in molecular biology from Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Science and completed her dissertation at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. She also holds BA in molecular biology from Princeton University. Dr. Park served as board trustee for American Friends of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and is a member of the Council of Korean Americans and Private Equity Women Investor Network.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Note to self, just we're going to reduce our bios for next year. All right, well, so we'll go ahead and get started. And Michelle, who is joining us remotely, will provide a overview. Let me have that clicker if you don't mind. Please, will advance. But before we get there, wanted to just kind of identify and present to you the members of the Product Development Advisory Committee. We have a very kind of cross-disciplinary group of CEOs, venture investors, tech commercialization in some of our Texas institutions, a really good group of people. And we've kind of refreshed the deck this year. And I want to say that there's three individuals who you don't see on this list who you've seen in years past. One is Ann Tanabe. Ann Tanabe was the president of BioHouston and is known and loved to everybody. She passed away earlier this year from a very brief fight with cancer. It overwhelmed her in January. And so we're very sad to see her go, and our prayers are with her family. Jonathan McQuitty, who you may remember, and David Lowe are also off the committee. They have served this committee almost since its beginning. And so they felt it was time to rotate off. But we're blessed by the fact that we have three new great members. One is sitting next to me, Sarah Hine, who I'll introduce to you in a moment. Ross Barrett, who's out of Shreveport, Louisiana, is the general partner of the Cancer Focus Fund, which is a investment fund that has partnered up with MD Anderson Cancer Center to attract companies into the MD Anderson network and the UT System network for their clinical trials. So it's very interesting to hear the prior discussion. This is another area in which we're using product development and, attracting companies from outside the state and outside the US to come to Texas for their clinical trials. And then Conley Jones, who's a vice president for the life sciences of Alexandria Venture Investment. And Alexandria is Alexandria Real Estate, which started off in the biotech space, building facilities, labs, buildings, manufacturing facilities, and then they've now started to invest in companies, and they're also an investor in a number of the CPRIT funded companies. So we're really excited to have this group as part of our Product Development Advisory Committee. And we have great goals, as we always do, for the coming year. And so the next, if I can get this to advance, thought we would do kind of what we've been doing over the last couple of years is provide you kind of a market snapshot. Michelle, who is with New Enterprise Investment Venture Firm, is right on the money. She sees the deal flow. And so, Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you and just tell me when you want me to advance.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. And it's great to see everyone at the committee, on the Oversight Committee, and a welcome to Sarah. Apologies for not being able to be there in Austin in person. And Andrew, if you could just flip back to the slide before that, slide 3. I don't know why I didn't notice this before. One more slide. We're not based in Los Angeles. I don't know a lot of so but we are based in Menlo Park on Sand Hill Road. That just caught my eye. I don't know how long that's been there, but just wanted to correct that. Okay, so happy to provide a market overview. Happy today to do so because I think, and I'll show you this and speak to it in subsequent slides, but I do feel that, I don't want to start off all doom and gloom. So, just want to say up front that, it does look bumpy right now. It's been brutal, but, I can't wait for the next couple slides to say it is going to get better. It's starting to look better already. But just to review the year to date, I think there's no other way to put it. It's been a bumpy year, 2025. It's been particularly brutal for the biopharma sector. Concurrent with, the changes, the transition of the new administration, we've all been managing through a pretty rough macro environment, due in part to just the geopolitical instability and trade policy uncertainty. The biotech sector year to date has been particularly challenged relative to the broader market performance, particularly as you compare to the tech sector, which has benefited significantly from the AI boom, at least through the first part of the year. Investment activity in the biopharma sector has dramatically slowed this year. This past quarter was the first quarter without a biotech IPO pricing since 2009. So the last biotech IPO was priced over 6 months ago, mid-February. And I think, as we all know, there have been some specific headwinds in biopharma. Starting with the three letters, CMS, HHS, MFN, the most favored nation executive order. All of this, with the combined potential negative impact on drug pricing and pricing for drugs for the pharmaceutical company in the States have not been kind to the sector. We continue to have the looming threat of pharma tariffs. The FDA regulatory overhaul, almost like a soap opera every day. You just don't know what to expect with the changes that are happening in terms of personnel and leadership at the FDA. And then, there's been the threat of eroding research support with the potential cuts to the NIH research budget. And in addition, waning support for vaccines as well as the CDC. But that's, behind us. We're going to try to move on and look to a more favorable outlook with the next slide. So while the MFN initiative has posed a challenge for the industry, it does appear, if you look at the performance of the biotech index, that some of this has been now baked into expectations from investors. And we're starting to see that, the index is no longer reacting as dramatically, to any news flow as it relates to MFN. And then last week, biotech actually, the stocks picked up strongly, finally bringing the XBI Biotech Index up for the year. Next slide, Andrew. So, M&A activity does appear to be up after a slowdown in the first part of the year, which has built some confidence again in the sector. So we do have, the dollars raised to date, or the dollars from M&A transactions have already eclipsed last year in total deal value. We're seeing a rising trend, importantly, in private company acquisitions, which is a rough 50-50 split versus the publics. And this is an increase over the last 2 years when a lot of the acquisitions were predominantly on the public company side. We're also starting to see more private company M&A deals at different stages, particularly the earlier stage, with deals, licensing fees that are paid up front and then back-end loaded milestones baked into the structure of the deal. And then very importantly, as it relates to CPRIT and the PDAC grantees, the oncology companies remain the most active on the acquisition target front. Just to add in, we're starting to see that the market for venture privates has picked up, particularly this month, despite the historical summer slowdown observed before Labor Day. We are starting to hear some recent pro-biopharma industry rhetoric from FDA and HHS. There's been a recent flurry of timely drug approvals, and I'm adding this in just given that there were 3 announced just last week. And then the fiscally expansionary Big Beautiful Bill, we believe and others believe should support long-term expansion for risk appetite, which is always good for biotech. This is also potentially accompanied by money that might be rotating away from tech stocks as we start to see a potential sell-off in the AI tech stocks continuing through the back half of the year. And then most importantly, this continues, the fundamental demand for new medicines continues to grow. And then the next slide, what does this mean for CPRIT and the impact that CPRIT can and continues to deliver? Overall, the theme is that there's a current funding shortage. Again, the private investments are down in 2025, and this is on a deal count and capital invested basis. There has been a lull, as I alluded to earlier, in the biotech public equities market. The absence of an IPO window, Q2 represented the first quarter without a biotech IPO pricing since 2009. VCs are challenged and have been challenged this year to raise new capital. The venture funds are projected to raise $16 billion this year, which is significantly less than what has been raised in previous years, the previous 5 years in particular. Investor focus is turning to capital efficiency and runway extension through clinical and regulatory data catalysts. And so the opportunity remains and continues to grow for CPRIT to fill this funding gap. I guess here I wanted to say, to address a question raised earlier on whether CPRIT is funding this gap. The answer is absolutely, particularly in the backdrop of the challenged market and the potential decline in NIH research dollars. And with the streamlining of the application process, which has been particularly helpful in attracting a steadily increasing number of strong applicants, we feel that it is important and remains critical to continue to do so. And what better way to illustrate the benefits of CPRIT funding than hearing from a grantee? And so we're pleased, very pleased to have Sarah Hine not only join the committee, but also to be able to present for you today. And I'll let Sarah introduce herself, but just briefly, she's the founder and CEO of March Biosciences. And I think it's very important, as does Andrew, that she can speak to how the CPRIT grant has helped enable March Biosciences to secure the Series A funding dollars required to advance their lead CAR T-cell therapy into a phase 2 program.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Michelle? All right, so I have the honor of introducing Sarah Hine. And Sarah, you would be proud to know, is Texas born, Texas braised.
Texas born.
Texas born, but so she got her PhD from Baylor College of Medicine in molecular and cellular biology. And then she went into venture, and then she went into, decided rather than have a lab coat, you decided to put on a suit and go into venture, and then ultimately into biopharmaceutical companies. And then she was one of the first EIRs for the Accelerator for Cancer Therapeutics program that CPRIT funded at the Texas Medical Center. And during that time, she came to know her co-founder in the company March Bio, Max Mamikin. And the thing that I love about the March story is that it's Texas, Texas, Texas. And this is going to be a success. I think we're all going to be excited to celebrate in years to come. But we're really honored to not only have her on the PDAC, but also have her here to present a few slides about what's going on in March Bio and how CPRIT was really kind of a difference maker and really getting the company launched. All right.
All right, thank you. Well, no pressure after an introduction like that, I think. So as Andrew said, I've been in Texas since about 2010. I originally came down for my graduate degree. I think I've been here so long, it just feels like apparently I'm native from Texas. And I actually have a lot to thank CPRIT for over the years. When I was a trainee at Baylor, I was actually supported in part by one of the training awards at Baylor. The TMC Accelerator for Cancer Therapeutics was also supported by CPRIT. Thank you very much. At the time that I was hired to help launch that program, I felt like it was a recognition when we were doing the prior startup. I was the oddball out, being like, we have this giant medical center here. We have 3 major cancer centers across Texas, and yet we're not investing as much in biotech. And you know what they say, when you complain about things, you get volunteered to go help do it. So that was the accelerator. And when I met Max and saw an earlier version of the clinical data that led us to start March Biosciences. So I'm going to do a quick recap of the program, the lead asset, the work that we've been doing with the CPRIT funds, and then just some observations made during that time. So, oh, there's a weird background. The product that we now call MB-105 is a CD5-directed autologous T-cell therapy, CAR T-cell therapy, that we are developing initially for T-cell lymphoma, although there's a couple indications it could be applied to. And the reason for that is T-cell lymphoma is a particularly detrimental diagnosis to get within the lymphoma paradigm. Unlike the B-cell lymphoma patients, which are now, which is the majority of your lymphoma patients and has a number of lines of therapy available to them, including these powerful CAR T-cell therapies, there's really not been meaningful improvements in about 15 years for these patients. At diagnosis, your 5-year survival is about 30 to 60%. Most patients will progress after first line, at which point there's a handful of salvage therapies, but no real standard of care. And then your overall survival, unfortunately, drops to less than 20% in about 3 years. You're really measuring lifespan in months at that point, unfortunately. And what was remarkable about the trial at the Cell and Gene Therapy Center, led not just by Max Moken, but also Malcolm Brenner, Dr. Helen Heslop, and Lakisa Hill, is they had seen what really was a remarkable response rate already for these T-cell lymphoma patients. 4 of the 11 patients treated were able to achieve a complete response. 2 of those patients are actually alive. I need to update that, actually. It's 6 years now, essentially cured, it seems, of their prior malignancies, and a really quite favorable safety profile, particularly an indication where you only have months to live at that point. You can see this representative scan here, patients even with a very high tumor burden were able to achieve a complete remission. And so to me, it felt like a slam dunk. And as maybe Michelle can also comment, it never is, especially when you're trying to start a startup. And by the time we were really starting this, it was a particularly difficult environment. Cell and gene therapies were starting to face some headwinds, even more so than the larger biopharma sector. And this is a smaller indication, although we believe quite meaningful, both in market potential as well as patient need, but really being able to tell that story and do it from a place in Texas, which is not where people expect to see biotech startups as much, although we're trying to change that story. And so this was the timeline that we had actually submitted to CPRIT initially, and I'm really proud to say we're actually still on this timeline. We have not had to, make major revisions to the goals and objectives and the timeline. In fact, the only major revision we really made is we moved up some of our correlatives to during the trial. And we're running this real-time correlatives to track the cell qualities of the product within the patients now. And that's actually happening in Houston at the portal site in Helix Park. And so I guess we did modify our goals and objectives, but forward, not backwards. One of the things that we had focused on, we were actually a resubmission, I'm okay to say. And, when we started, there was a lot of concern around CMC. Venture also focuses on CMC, and I think it's a pretty correct thing that CPRIT, the review panels tend to focus on, because it can be the place where you hit really significant delays and challenges for drug development. And so what we had done, and we were just finishing out as we were moving into this award, was moving the manufacturing out of the academic setting, streamlining it for eventual scalability. Because this is an autologous cell therapy, we have to make and release every single patient batch, which means making that change as early as we could during the development of the product meant that we could try to avoid challenges and concerns around product comparability later, thereby trying to help smooth our path towards a commercial approval. And so that was something that we had sort of taken on as feedback. We are always, of course, looking for new and continued improvements, but because we've made a lot of these sort of real functional changes and locked in the improvements from the phase 1 trial, we felt like that's going to be our major hurdle, and then the additional phase appropriate development shouldn't represent a significant barrier. This is the trial that's ongoing. One of the big questions that we got actually, and I think it was a relevant question because it felt ambitious, was would FDA really let us go in at second line or above? And they did. Well, in PTCL they did, and CTCL we had to go in third line or above. But it felt like a very early line, and I think it was correct to question because, most of the time when you're developing novel therapies like this, you'd expect to see fourth or fifth or whatever line. But the truth is there really is no standard of care in that salvage therapy setting. And so FDA actually did recognize that and let us move forward as we had thought that they would. And part of the way we bridged that, even with the manufacturing transfer, was that safety run-in feature of this trial design that Dr. Alice Bexon had designed for us prior to our first application. Is really a testament to her skill that really the trial has not been modified significantly. We've made some tweaks to the enrollment, trying to ensure that we have the right patients for the trial. A little bit of changes to the monitoring, but by and large, this trial design has survived since the very earliest planning that we did for that CPRIT application. And frankly, it was much earlier than we would have as the new startup otherwise. And I think that served us well into the fundraising process as well. So we've launched now in 10 sites across the US, really looking at the sites in Houston as our anchor sites. And I do have to highlight that Dr. Swami Iyer at Anderson in particular has been able to pull a significant number of patients and has been involved with us along with Dr. Hill, who continues to be enthusiastic and a great partner to the program to ensure that we put together the best trial design and are able to speak about this and be aware of the patient needs through that process. Then we have a number of marquee sites across the US at the major centers for T-cell lymphoma patients, as well as a few sites that are, one of the things that was important to me, because I grew up in a rural area, was trying to hit more rural areas as well, and make sure we could make this more tractable to those patients. And so we do have Omaha and Iowa as well. And that was quite intentional in Denver, which is near my old stomping ground. We've dosed 10 patients to date, and we're on track for we've scheduled and are on track to finish out all 15 patients for the stage 1 portion of that trial by end of this year, including the readouts. Because this is a public forum, I did not put the full results for the trial. I've heard this is recorded, but what I will say is we have seen really robust expansion. That was a really big hurdle for us. We did calibrate the CPRIT award, a lot of our early fundraising around this initial stage 1 portion of the trial. And the reason for that is there was a lot of scar tissue built up in the ecosystem around moving products out of these academic settings. And so we felt like if we can move the product, demonstrate that it appeared to be still functionally working, and treat those patients, that would provide a lot of confidence and ability to move forward. We're seeing really nice, robust expansion of the product and all the patients that we've treated to date, good functional persistence. The safety profile does appear to be similar to the BCM phase 1 trial. What's interesting about this product actually is relatively low, what's called cytokine release syndrome and ICANS neurotoxicity, which shifts a little bit the paradigm of what's considered to be a default risk for, I think, CAR T-cell therapies in general. The evaluated, actually, we have 5 evaluable patients to date that changed within the last couple of days. And we have seen, I will say, sort of at a high level, really good response rates. We're really encouraged with what we're seeing. I'm very confident we're going to move forward into stage 2 at this rate. The clinicians continue to be very excited, which is part of how we've enrolled these patients so quickly. When I told, I think, a lot of different partners and stakeholders that we were going to enroll 15 patients in a relatively rare indication in a year and get 10 sites up this quickly, I think they thought I was young and naive, and I might be, but we did do that, and we've been able to move that quickly because of the excitement from the clinicians. That's helped us carry forward. So something I wanted to highlight right here is, as Andrew said, we really have been catalyzed by CPRIT. We started at the Accelerator for Cancer Therapeutics. TMC was one of our early investors alongside Portal Innovations, and that helped us get the momentum and get enough progress to then go for that CPRIT. And we did apply for a full award, even though we were a relatively new company. And CPRIT and Cancer Focus Fund both were really key stakeholders and investors in March early on that allowed us to move forward and get to that Series A as one of the only sort of new early series cell therapy investments, I would say, that was announced last year. Our leads were, of course, Mission and 4Bio Capital, but I would, of course, highlight Alexandria did, in fact, invest in our round. KDT Ventures, which is based here in Austin, invested in our round, as well as another local firm called Modi Ventures. And then we've also pulled in these outside partners, so Mission, 4Bio, Volney, and really been able to bring them together and I hope bring increased interest and focus on the opportunities that are here in Texas, the ability to build a company that can move very quickly outside of those coastal hubs. We're at, this is slightly out of date. I didn't have time to go back and grab the new hires. I think we're at 11 hires now, and I'm gonna be up to 13 here very shortly. And predominantly Texas-based. All the full-time hires that we've made to date have all been based in Houston. And we've been able to grow then and move very quickly as a synchronized team. And I'm really proud of the work that the team has done over this year, managing what is considered one of the most complex trial structures as a new team in phase 2 national. We don't do anything easy at March Bio. So we are still on track. This is sort of those initial goals that we had sort of set out. We're on track to do, and I think we're going to be finished end of this year. So we'll be probably talking to Kristen about that or Ken here very soon. Lessons learned. And I think this is something, you know, what I want to sort of say is again, sort of restate the gratitude that I have for CPRIT having this program and putting together a panel of advisors who were able to really see the potential value from that phase 1 trial and give us the opportunity to launch this product and move forward in a really difficult environment. I don't think that can be understated. And what I'm really grateful for as well is that, you know, we had some hypotheses because of changes that I didn't have time to go into that we would see some improvements even over the early response rates in phase 1. And so far that does appear to be what we're tracking to do. And so that's really led to a lot of enthusiasm around a program that I think otherwise would have had a lot of challenges, particularly in the current environment. We hit stumbles like everybody does. It's not been a perfect story. It's not a startup unless you make a few almost company ending mistakes, I think. So, you know, unlocking that year 1 match was a little bit more difficult than we expected. There was a budget negotiation process. There was some confusion in that process about the ways that we were supposed to be cutting the funding, and that led to a miscalibration of the way that we were doing that. I do want to say one of the great things about the team that Ken's put together is the ability to actually have rational and problem-solving conversations on how to address these sorts of issues. And, you know, I don't think there's another granting agency out there. I know it's a huge lift for the team. Maybe they wish they were less collaborative sometimes because it's so much work having to deal with all of these individualized programs and situations. But I do think it makes a difference on the ability for the awardees to move forward and to succeed. It still took time. It took about 9 months. And part of that, you know, I think the process has been streamlined a lot. The pre-applications are actually, I think, quite helpful to the awardees and hopefully to the reviewing team as well. But, you know, one of the tricky bits is, you know, you don't fully know where you're at least unless something's changed, until you don't get kicked out at certain stages. And so you're trying to sort of talk to investors. You're like, I'm pretty sure we're going to get it. I think we're going to get it. I think we're in the running. But then it's hard to sort of keep that momentum going. It might be nice to maybe have an early score readout, like you see with NIH or something like that, just because that would help you have something concrete to point to other than vibes on where you are in the process. And then, you know, investors are always sort of a continuing conversation. So you have some drop out, the market was changing, then we had to go out and find some new ones. And it just takes time. And I think appreciating that, particularly in the continuing environment, I think is always nice. And the other thing I always say is I know there's been some really good relocation stories. I hope that there's also continues to be some really good homegrown stories as well. And I hope that we continue to be one of them. So one of my goals, other than making a successful product and getting it to more patients, is to leave a whole new set of operators, of people who know what a good startup should look like and how good execution should look like. So that way, one of the continuing challenges I always hear in Houston is, well, we just don't have operators to make companies successful, right? And I think through some of these stories where we have people understand what good execution can look like, we'll have more people who can credibly operate companies. I think that's it.
Right. Any questions for Sarah before we?
Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Good to see you, Greg.
Sarah, well, last time we were in a session like this, I asked you about treating patients with SLL.
Mm-hmm.
So I already asked that question, so I figured I better ask you a different question.
Yeah.
And one of those is that one of the things that's been in the news a lot with CAR T is autoimmune diseases,
Yeah.
particularly primary progressive MS and what's the other one? And another one, and scleroderma.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if your company, if your product would have any application to this like burgeoning idea of treating autoimmune diseases with CAR T.
Yeah, we've looked at that really, really closely. We think that there could be, and certainly those CAR Ts, most of them, again, they're all borrowed from the oncology side. So they're all directed to B cells and B cell driven autoimmune diseases, or you have T regulatory therapies that are trying to bolster the sort of natural checkpoints and rebalance the immune system through engineered T regulatory cells, which have their own sort of peculiarities as well. We would be one of the only widely applicable, sort of widely directed T cell targeted therapies. So we have looked at it. It's difficult to model in a preclinical model. And so where we've landed with some of those clinicians is go finish out the oncology program or finish getting your proof of concept in the oncology program. And then maybe we can circle back and think about ways to approach the FDA around evaluating the product once the safety's been more robustly established with the new improved version of the product in, say, an autoimmune application.
And one other follow-up, that was excellent, thank you. One other follow-up question, the field of CAR T is moving rapidly. You're doing autologous CAR T.
Yeah.
But a lot of the work has gone on in cancer in NK, CAR NK.
Yeah.
And in vivo CAR T therapy. But that's not what my question's about. My question has to do with allogeneic CAR T,
Yes.
or what people call off-the-shelf CAR T therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if in your company, if you could say this, is there any consideration to looking at allogeneic CAR T?
Oh yeah, we're always considering it. So all NK cells or allogeneic CAR T cells, all of them have been somewhat stymied by patient rejection of the cell therapy platform, the allogeneic cells. In vivo is not as applicable to what we're doing because it'd be difficult to target your effector cells and not hit your tumor cells. So we feel like this is the right application, or an engineered cell application is the right starting point. We continue to monitor the allogeneic therapy platforms. I think there's always opportunities for partnership down the road. But when you have a product in hand that's working, and some of the allogeneic strategies have had a little bit more tempered efficacy, we felt really strongly that moving forward with best-in-class autologous practices, looking at those automated platforms that are also increasing speed and dropping vein-to-vein time was our best and most robust path forward to be able to create a product for patients. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, why don't we flip back to the PDAC report, and in the interest of time, we're going to move very quickly. Some of these slides you've seen before. I've just updated them in terms of the dollars that have been awarded over the course of the last several years. If I can. Here we go. All right, so interestingly, and I think this is a tribute to the changes that were made a few years ago to go to the preliminary application process, and it's a testament to what Ken and Kristen have been doing on the product development program, that we are getting the awards out, and that is absolutely critical and something we've all wanted. This is just an update from last year. I'll skip by that. This also just some observations over the course, and I'll just jump to a few of these. The award numbers, the number of awards per cycle are trending up, which is good. We're at 6.75 versus where we were at 6 last year. And the dollar amounts are trending down, which is not a bad thing. That means if we're making more awards with the same amount of money, the numbers are going to go down. And then, as you know, the 25.2 cycle was the supplemental awards, which, I think was somewhat of a test process, but it is dynamite. And I'm going to talk to you why the PDAC thinks that the supplemental awards are something that should be maintained and perhaps even increased in the years to come. So this is what I call the conversion rate kind of table. And this just tells you, if you look at the 23 through 25, so of the apps that were invited, 38 were received. And so that's an 90% conversion. And then of the ones that pass from orals to diligence, 43%. So 18 over 42, if you're just looking at the company awards here. And then that's down from last year, but it's only by a few percentage points. So it's just a one or two that didn't, it's not a big change there. But then if you look at the blue number, 38%, 16 over 42, that means if you get invited to submit a full application, you have nearly a 40% chance of getting an award. And so this is why the preliminary application process is so important. Now, out of 164, which is phenomenal, I don't think we've ever seen that in the history of CPRIT in one cycle. It's you're going to get some misses, right? They're going to be good ones that are in that group that don't make it to full. But the fact that we're going from, it gives a lot of confidence to the companies to really put together very strong applications. And we know that we have kind of the culled out the ones that we don't think are going to make it. And we've taken the ones that we think are really good, strong science. 40% chance of success is huge. On the seed side, 55%. So that means over half of the seeds that go to a full app are going to get awarded. And that's also very exciting. So that's information when I talk to potential, applicants, I say, look, you get past preliminary, you have a really good shot at getting funded. You still have to you go back to square one, you have to put a full app together and it has to be very solid. But these are really, exciting numbers to look at. So just kind of jumping into our summary slides, as Michelle mentioned, we continue, despite the challenging market conditions, we see high rate of high quality applicants coming to CPRIT. And, it's obvious that people are looking for money, but I think that the quality of the applications has largely improved over the years, notwithstanding March Bio, which is probably the best one we've awarded yet. But it's a good thing to see as we're progressing the program. And then the number of seed awards are holding steady at around 40 to 44% of the total number of awards for the year. And then, the budget negotiations, which, has started in the last couple of years, it's a good process. In our view, it probably should be more surgical, because if you make a blanket, everybody needs to cut a certain amount of money. Then people make decisions, well, I'll just increase my match. But then if they're not able to raise the match once they get the award, then we just are back to square one. So we think that, as you'll see in the coming slide, it should be considered more on a case-by-case basis. And really, does the company really need that? So kind of considering the market conditions, we, full speed ahead. What the product development group is doing is fantastic. The flexibility that Ken and Michelle and the team have working with the companies is really, benefiting the companies, particularly like March and other companies that are still struggling to raise their capital and their matching funds. The thing that's hard for CPRIT is that you're open to all technologies. You're not putting a filter on what you want to fund. And we know, like cell therapy was down, immuno-oncology is down. Money is going into radiotherapeutics. Money is going into antibody drug conjugates, or GLP-1, which is not cancer related, or cardiometabolic disease. But, we should be looking at the companies that are coming to us and determining, are these companies able to raise the matching funds? Do they have the right team? Do they have the right investors behind them? There should be a higher level of scrutiny on that. And I know that Ken has kind of shared that with the panel reviewers. And so it's something that we should be thinking about. And also think in part of that thought process is what type of technologies are getting the money from venture, that are attracting the money, because it may be a hot technology, but if it's non-fundable, they can't get out of neutral. Mentioned the follow-on supplemental funding, that is rewarding the companies that CPRIT has funded for doing well and doing good and advancing their technology. And I think that there was a high response rate to the supplemental last year. There was only $10 million available. And I think that, these are companies we already know. They're not going to submit if they're falling behind or haven't raised money. They're only going to submit if they think they're doing well. And then this is really kind of equivalent to venture follow-on funding. So we're putting more money on the companies that we really know and we think are progressing well. Our view as the PDAC is that shouldn't be just limited to what money's left over from the first cycle, but let's set aside a bucket of money to really go after and support those companies that are, doing well under their current programs. And so really think that, to the product development subcommittee of the oversight committee, we really think that is something that, you should be considering. And then the last item is the revenue sharing model. It has worked good for quite a number of years, and it's very company friendly, but CPRIT shouldn't be last in line to get a payment if there's a success. And so, we think that, and this has been some discussion we've been having, CPRIT should be further up the line, but not, taking money out of the hands of the company when, when they need it to advance the technology. We would like to offer some ideas around that, and the PDAC is committed to preparing some bullet points and some thoughts about how to maybe improve that. Because if a company sells itself, has a big equity, event or liquidity event, CPRIT's still waiting until the product becomes a commercial product. And so there is opportunity. Now, CPRIT has taken equity in some of those companies, and we think that there should be more opportunities that CPRIT should look as those companies are development. Is there an opportunity to take equity in this company? Because you don't just win if the product wins, you win if the company wins. So you get a broader balance of your investment. And so with that said, sorry I spoke so fast, but if there's any questions, you guys have been here for 3 hours now, so happy to take any questions.
Thank you all for your presentations, and Dr. Hine, thank you for being here. Best wishes to you and continued success. We might have time for one question, Dr. Rosenfeld.
I will try to limit myself. And Andrew, this is for you. Michelle gave a very nice outline of how investments are going on a national level, but we live in Texas. So I'd like to ask you about Texas investors. And my two questions are, how do you see the Texas investor situation? And the second question is, and I know this one requires a crystal ball, but do you see any potential for the Texas Stock Exchange to provide a mechanism for Texas-based companies to IPO?
Okay, well, I'll try to address this fast. Sorry. So the biggest issue with a lot of these companies, and March is an example of it, is that when they're preclinical, when they don't have clinical data, they're raising money from typically friends and family, small family offices. Those small family offices don't want to be the lead in that investment unless there's a sophisticated lead. So it creates a gap, and that's what creates the time issue with trying to raise your money. Is you want to find that lead investor other than CPRIT who is going to validate your technology. And so what's exciting that we're seeing in Dallas and Houston and Austin is that there are smaller VC firms that are coming into these companies, like some of the VCs in her company, Portal, TMC Ventures, Small Investments, Modi. So we're seeing more funds coming together in Texas that are doing that, but they still want to follow a Texas lead. To your second question with the Texas Stock Exchange, and that is one of the most exciting things that's happening in Texas now in the capital market space. And, if you look at it, it's going, look at the team that's been put together. It's unclear if they're willing to go with the high-risk biotech companies. But if we can deliver, a message to them that if there's a CPRIT funded company, if there's IPO opportunity, because most of the biotech IPOs will come out with a big raise on the NASDAQ or lesser on the NYSE, and they will trail down. Some will take off, but I think it's a discussion that's worth having. I think most of what I have read about the Texas Stock Exchange has been not biotech related, but would be definitely, if you have connections there, we should pursue that. And I don't know, Michelle, if you have any input on the Texas Stock Exchange.
She froze.
Yes, Michelle's frozen.
Okay.
All right, so there you go.
I'd just like to make a request of the committee. You talked about on funding, continuing funding of existing investments we've already made. You talked about a set aside. My question would be, do they move to the front of the line or do you do a set aside? And if you do a set aside, how much do you set aside? I mean, I'm not asking for an answer today. I mean, I'll let y'all talk about it. And if you could move us up in the payment structure, refund structure, that certainly will help us with dealing with our legislature. So
Yeah, exactly.
I would encourage you all to make a recommendation on that you said you would do, and that would be most helpful for us.
Absolutely, 100%.
Good comments. Anyone else? Thank you very much for your information and your report. Mr. Strong, Dr. Park, Dr. Hine, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to item 12. Still got a little ways to go here. The chair recognizes Ms. Doyle to present the Health and Safety Code Section 102.1062 waivers for fiscal year 2026.
Members, behind tab 9, I have 5 conflict of interest waivers. You guys are familiar with this process. We put these in place when there are conflicts that we need to disclose to allow these people to participate. So we have 4 conflict of interest waivers for CPRIT staff: Carlton Allen, Donald Brandy, John Ellis, and Dr. Michelle Lewan. These are all waivers that you have approved in the past. Nothing has changed. It provides updates. On the 5th waiver that we have, it's a standing waiver, and it's for our review council members. There's situations where they will hear an application that they have a conflict with in their panel. They don't participate in that in the discussion or the vote. But once it gets to the review council level, it's the review council that puts forward the full slate. So we need them to be able to participate in considering all of those that go forward with the application, even if they have a conflict with one or more applications. So that's why we have the standing waiver. Again, these are ones that you've all seen before, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Doyle? Is there a motion to approve the 5 proposed Health and Safety Code Section 102.1062 waivers for fiscal year 2026?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Second.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move to item 13, the Chief Financial Officer Report. Mr. Grant Weaver will come to the podium to present the Chief Financial Officer Report.
Good morning, members of the public. Glad to be with you this morning. Grant Weaver, Chief Financial Officer. As we sit here on August the 20th and feel the cool breeze of 90-degree temperatures re-enter our life and college football, Friday night lights kicking off, I'm tempted to wish you all a happy new fiscal new year early for September 1. But before we look ahead to 2026, if I could, I'd invite y'all to take a trip with me back to May 31st in our third quarter FY 2025 financial and performance reports that were last published to the state oversight bodies. If I could direct your attention to the materials starting on page 10-2 for the third quarter FY 2025 and our administrative strategies, our indirect administrative strategy, specifically CPRIT had encumbered or expended about 72% of our total $5 million budgeted for the year. Sounds about right, what you might expect for being 3/4 of the way through FY25 at that time. Referring to our direct administrative budget, we had expended and encumbered about 54% of our total funds budgeted for the year as of May 31st. You might have noticed that number dropped a little bit from the last update I brought to you, and that's because you may remember you had approved our grant management replacement endeavor 2 meetings ago, and then subsequently we received appropriation of that money through the supplemental appropriations bill and received approval to go forward with the grant management replacement project. And so that additional $11.5 million in our direct administrative strategy is sitting in your budget update shown as unencumbered, but we will be moving forward with that project in the coming months. And I believe Soma will fill you in on some more details about that later this morning. One other thing I did want to note about that, though, when we were originally planning that project, we thought we would get the money starting in 2026 and going forward. Surprise, surprise, we received it as part of the supplemental appropriations bill, which was great, allowed us to get started over the summer. But that money carries with it some special permissions we refer to as UB, or unexpended balance authority. So even though that was 25 money and is in our 2025 budget, as you see, we will carry the bulk of that money forward with us into 2026 and even into 2027 as that project really ramps up. So be prepared. You'll be seeing that and hearing about that more as we continue on into FY 2026. And then finally, on the operating budget, with the slate of awards reviewed today, that will bring our total awards for fiscal year 2025 to just about $260 million. As Kristen mentioned earlier, that should leave us a buffer amount of a little under $2 million, which is a nice, comfortable amount, but also I think evidence is that we were efficient in our award making and utilized our money wisely in FY25. Moving on to the revenue section, during the third quarter, we received about $250,000 in total license and royalty fees, as is typically been the case. And in reviewing the meeting materials from last year, there was some discussion about WellReg and those quarterly royalty payments that we were receiving last year and how those were kind of ramping up to be a more significant amount. And I think, if I recall correctly, we originally gave that award out in 2011, and just last year in 2024, we were starting to see those royalties come through. In just the last 3 years or so, we have seen roughly a year over year doubling of that revenue stream. And so whereas in 2024, we received just under $500,000 total from WellReg, here in 2025 through May month end, we had received about $700,000. Subsequently, we received the 4th royalty payment from WellReg for the year, and that brings us to a little bit over $900,000 for the fiscal year. And so I point that out again, just to continue the theme I've been updating you on the past couple of discussions, that the WellReg payments seem to be healthy and they're showing a significant increase, which I'm sure is good news for our continued discussions of revenue sharing, licensing, et cetera. If I could direct your attention to our third quarter performance report beginning on page 10-7. Mr. Margot, I appreciate you teeing me up earlier during our Chief Prevention Officer's update. You were asking how our prevention services numbers kind of measure to the pre-COVID period. For the third period, we reported to the LBB and others that we served just under 385,000 people with prevention services through 3 quarters of the fiscal year. So that brought us up to about 860,000 total in FY25, which already eclipses our benchmark of 750,000 for the year, which again, we still have 1 more quarter to report. But just extrapolating that number of 860,000 through 3 quarters through the end of the fiscal year, I would guess we'll creep up past 900,000 or so, and that looks like it would bring us roughly in line to where we were in 2019 when we had about 950,000 served from our pension services. And then in the interim period, it sort of hovered around 800, 850, but it does look like we're resuming to pre-COVID levels. Lastly, if I could direct your attention to the material starting on page 10-11 in our debt issuance history. When I spoke with you in May, you may recall you approved our bond resolution and other information materials for FY 2026. And in the course of preparing those materials, I gave you the most updated debt issuance figures at that time, which did include our third quarter numbers of a $78 million issuance. Subsequent to that time in June, we issued the final 64.6 million in funding for FY 2025. And then in August, the Public Finance Authority, as a way primarily to manage our liquidity considerations, went ahead and refunded all of our outstanding short-term commercial paper obligations into long-term bonds. And so that has the benefit of kind of setting us back at zero as far as our allowance every year for what we can issue. And so we'll be initiating our first issuance for FY 2026 through TPFA in September. So with that said, I think that covers the highest points of the financial update, but I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Any questions? Very well. We'll proceed to item 14, which is our contract renewal and approvals. Mr. Weaver, please proceed.
Yes, as those of you who participate in the audit subcommittee may recall, we have 3 contracts to recommend for your approval for FY 2026 this year. First, we've got the economic assessment of the cost of cancer in Texas, or the Perryman contract. You may recall he provides a study every year about the cost of cancer, which includes a measurement of key economic performance indicators based on CPRIT's funding and program impact. That contract is $205,000 for FY 2026, which is very much in line with where it has been historically and in FY 25. We also have our internal audit services contract with Weaver and Tidwell. As Kristen mentioned, we've got our colleagues from the state auditor's office coming to visit us for an efficiency audit here in 2026. So the internal auditors are going to help gauge our readiness and hopefully provide some areas where we can get even more ready for the state auditors to come visit us. In addition, they've got some audit work lined up on information security and intellectual property revenue sharing agreements with our institutions and so forth, and then also follow up from outstanding audit findings in FY 25. That contract will be $187,500. Again, very much in line with where it's been historically and where it was in FY 2025. And then finally, we've got a $162,000 contract with Business and Financial Management Solutions for our peer monitoring review services, and they sit in on all of our programs, application review and peer monitoring meetings to make sure that those with declared conflicts of interest have recused themselves accordingly, that CPRIT commentary is appropriate for the information being discussed, and that the discussion generally follows the tenor of the established scoring criteria. So again, $162,000, and they're very much in line with where they have been FY 25 and previously. One other small note, typically you might have seen that we bring more contracts for your approval by policy. Anything over $100,000 is what we bring to you. And as Kristen mentioned, in our season of transition and change, it has provided some silver linings, and one of those is allowing us to bring some work in-house where we've got the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do that. And so on some of those contracts for due diligence services and related legal work, we're seeing a reduction in those contracts again, because we're able to do some of that work in-house now.
Very good. Are there any questions for Mr. Weaver? Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 contract renewals with the Perryman Group, Weaver and Tidwell, and Business and Financial Management Solutions?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to, thank you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 16, the 2026 CPRIT Innovations 7 Conference.
Oh.
Ms. McConnell.
Good morning. I'm pleased to announce that we will have our next CPRIT Innovations Conference on September 21st and 22nd in 2026. It's a little bit more than a year away from now. It will be at the Moody Gardens Hotel Spa and Convention Center in Galveston, once again. Our awards dinner, the Texans Conquer Cancer Awards dinner, will be the night before the conference starts, so that will be September 20th. And there'll obviously be more to come. We'll start to send out save the date announcements through our listservs. So any grantees listening, you can mark your calendars. We'll obviously get registration systems up and running, as well as abstract systems. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. McConnell? All right, very good. Looking forward to it. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 17, the Grant Management Platform Assessment. The chair recognizes CPRIT's Information Security Officer, Mr. Soma Emaniki, to give an update on the Grant Management Platform Assessment.
Good morning.
Good question.
Okay. You're going to hear me use a couple acronyms here, GMP being the Grant Management Platform and TSS being the Department of Information Resources Technology Solution Services. Back in March, following the update, the inclusion of the capital budget that was approved by the OC and the approval in the supplemental session, we were able to begin the engagement with TSS to help us assess the need to deploy a new GMP. And I would say that is going really well. DIR came in and we are looking at the current state, what we're doing, trying to map out the workflow that we have today. That has helped us to, that has really helped us to identify pain points, the challenges that we face today in the grant management process. One of the things that we've really looked at are tools that are being used outside of the GMP to supplement what is being done today in the process. And we continue to document these things because the end goal, as the assessment is going on, will be to include the tools that are being used outside into a new GMP. You've heard a lot about AI. We are also looking at the inclusion of AI in the GMP to be more efficient, to help us achieve, things that are being manually done in our process today. And right now in the discovery phase, we are also conceptualizing a future state. That future state would help us evaluate what we call off-the-shelf software. Grant management platforms have come a long way today. And when we look at what we have today, while it was helpful at the inception of CPRIT, there has been a lot of improvements over time. And the challenge, what I would call the biggest challenge that we face today, is that the improvements done in what I would call, again, the off-the-shelf GMP is not introduced in the platform we use today until CPRIT requests that enhancement. And so moving over to an off-the-shelf will allow us to take advantages of those improvements as other grant agencies that share that platform make improvement. That improvement is shared across all the users and not specific to CPRIT. On the cost, we anticipate the initial cost to be a little bit high because we intend to migrate the data from our current GMP into the new GMP. But over the years, recurring costs should be significantly low as to what we're paying today. This modernization assessment will be completed before the next OC. So I hope to bring you more update at the November OC. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Let's move on to item 18, Communications Program Update. The chair recognizes CPRIT's Communications Director, Mark Leffler, to give us the update on CPRIT's communication activities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Oh, yes, I will go very fast. I'll be mercifully fast. So just two things to point out. One, we are starting the annual report process. So that's underway, which with a publication coming in January of next year. Second thing I want to point out is if you didn't see it through our clips when it was sent out, Kristen did do a fantastic interview with Spectrum News here in Austin. So if you haven't gotten a chance to see that, we're going to put it on our YouTube page later today, hopefully. So please check that out. We're very lucky to have a very great spokesman for CPRIT sitting right here. So that's it. Any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from Mr. Leffler on communications? Very good. Thank you for your good work. Appreciate it. Let's move on to item 19, subcommittee business. Moving on to the next agenda item, the subcommittee assignments for fiscal years 26 and 27. You have a memo in your packet regarding the proposed assignments. Are there any questions as presented? Members, is there a motion to approve the new subcommittee assignments for fiscal years 2026 and 2027?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item number 20, the election of board officers. We will now move to officer elections under agenda item 20. The Board Governance Subcommittee met August 7th and unanimously recommends the following slate of officers to serve 2-year terms ending in August of 2027. Cindy Payne as presiding officer, Dee Margot as vice presiding officer, Tommy Taylor as board secretary. Are there any questions? The chair makes a motion to approve Cindy Payne as presiding officer, Dee Margot as vice presiding officer, and Tommy Taylor as board secretary to serve the Oversight Committee for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we will move on to.
Mr. Chair or Dr. Chair, I have a, may I ask for 1 minute before we move on to the internal audit report? I talked about how this is a time of transition. And so, of course, it is a time of transition with a new chair coming in, and it means that our current chair will depart. I very, very briefly, as I told everyone, go fast. I do want to say, this has been quite a 2 years. You have overseen a legislative session, a transition in CEOs, a transition in our chief scientific officer, and shortly we'll see transitions in our chief prevention and chief product development officer. You have been, a rock for me and a good model of leadership. So I would like to present to you on behalf of CPRIT a gavel. So now you will have a gavel just like your dad. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I will. Thank you. And don't forget the 2 fire drills. Don't forget that.
Oh yeah, the 2 fire drills.
Yeah.
That's why we give the gavel at the end of the service, so you can bonk people.
Thank you very much. This has been an amazing 2 years, and transition is absolutely the right word. Who would have thought that we would have so many new faces, but so many great opportunities coming for CPRIT, and the work will continue. And I hope that Cindy can maybe with these transitions in place, move forward with some of the things we had tried to lay the groundwork for, one being our Oversight Committee Board Retreat, and another being getting the OC members out to site visits. And with our new program officers in place, hopefully we'll get more of that done in the next 2 years. So thank you very much for those kind words. We will now move on to saving the best for last, obviously. Item 15, the internal auditor report. And Mr. Graves. The podium is yours.
Since I'm last, I can take all the time I want, right? No, it should move pretty quick. I've got nothing but good news for you for this report. First, starting off, that we have completed the internal audit plan for this year with the wrap up of our internal audit follow-ups. So there are two reports that we completed. The first one being our IT general controls follow-up. Without going into any detail for IT security matters, I will tell you that there was one finding that we still had open and it is remediated. And so we have gone through, done our testing. So Soma and Shannon and their teams have performed all the remediation there, as well as in the communications follow-up. It was actually related to IT, having to do with the translation of the CPRIT website into Spanish and some other tagging and other requirements that were needed there. Their teams have done their diligence and completed that. And so that is also remediated. So on, I believe it is page 12.3 of your packet, there's a table, and I'll call your attention to just the second page, very bottom of the page. The only reports that have, or only internal audit findings that are open are from the internal audits we performed this year. So just a recognition of the CPRIT management team and their staff and everyone involved to remediate all the findings from prior years. And we are up to date and current. So I'll pause for any questions over either one of those reports before I move on.
Any questions?
All right. The last two things I have for you then, which are of probably most desired information, is as Mr. Weaver had presented earlier as part of the contract renewals, our fiscal year 2026 proposed internal audit plan. Those internal audits include information security, specific procedures on the post-award grant monitoring related to intellectual property compliance, and helping CPRIT monitor that, as well as preparation for the new SAO state efficiency audit, as well as just the follow-ups from those the prior internal audits that we performed. So that would be our proposed plan that we're asking for approval for this year. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Graves? Very well. So this is the report that Mr. Graves has provided to us. We will vote shortly on this information. Then we will move into closed session to receive the internal audit follow-up procedures report over information technology general controls, and also discuss matters related to personnel regarding the Chief Product Development Officer and the Chief Prevention Officer. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 internal audit plan, the fiscal year 2025 annual internal audit report, and the internal audit report over communications follow-up procedures?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, for members of the public watching this meeting, other than potential action related to the internal audit follow-up procedures report over information technology general controls and meeting dates for fiscal year 2026, we have reached the end of our agenda. I do not expect to act on other items after returning from closed session before adjourning the meeting. We will now move into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.076 to discuss the internal audit addressing information technology general controls, and Texas Government Code 551.074 to discuss personnel matters. The following CPRIT staff shall join the Oversight Committee in the closed session: Mr. Graves, Mr. Burgess, Mr. Emaniki, Ms. Cusick, Ms. McConnell, Mr. Ellis, Dr. Hebert, Ms. Nelson, and Ms. Doyle. Current time is 11:58 a.m. and we will be in closed session. The board now reconvenes in open session. The time is 12:10 p.m. Is there a motion to approve the internal audit follow-up procedures report over information technology general controls?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, now we will not take up agenda items 22 and 23. We'll move to agenda item 24. The CPRIT has included a schedule of the fiscal year 2026 meeting dates, beginning with the next regular Oversight Committee meeting, which will take place on November 19th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 quarterly meeting dates?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 25, here we go. The last time. If there is no further business and there is no objection, the chair moves to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second?
There is,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned at 12:11 PM.